Mia reflects on her life as the daughter of a minor noble, engaged to the son of a count. It was a match decided by their parents, a union she expected to be a quiet, dutiful affair centered around the art of alchemy. In a workshop within the kingdom of Remeldia, she meticulously prepares ingredients. With a determined, all right, she finishes chopping a pile of fresh green herbs, the tools of her trade scattered across the wooden table. Stretching her arms high above her head, she lets out a weary sigh of relief. The grueling task of processing the medicinal plants is finally complete, leaving her exhausted but satisfied with her contribution as an alchemist assistant. Her moment of rest is interrupted by the arrival of Gillis, the son of a count and a skilled alchemist. He looms over her with a cold, impatient gaze, questioning why she's still working and complaining about her slowness. Without a word of thanks, he announces his departure for other business, curtly ordering her to clean up the mess before she leaves. As the door slams shut, she lets out a heavy sigh, acknowledging the harsh reality of their loveless, political engagement. Left alone in the quiet workshop, she stares at the empty space where he stood. She realizes that lately, he has been dumping all the menial tasks on her and disappearing as soon as possible, leaving her to manage the shop that is supposed to be his. Despite the unfair treatment, she looks down at her hands, filled with a quiet resolve. She tells herself that as long as she can be involved in the grand work of alchemy, she will have no regrets about the path she has chosen. Her mind drifts back 8 years to the day she first met him. It was that encounter that opened her eyes to the wondrous world of alchemy, a discovery that changed the course of her life forever. Now, her days are a blur of constant motion, working at the Adventurers Guild during the week and assisting in the workshop on weekends. Though the schedule is punishing and she rarely has a moment to rest, she remains determined to work hard until the day of their wedding. Standing at her post in the guild, she contemplates the future. She considers that once her life settles down, she should probably stop helping at the workshop to focus on her duties as a wife. Yet a part of her feels a lingering reluctance to leave the craft behind. She is cornered by Gillis, who loudly demands her ring size for their upcoming marriage, while onlookers offer their congratulations, completely unaware of the cold pressure he is exerting on her. Later, she hurries through the guild's corridors, her mind racing with the realization that this marriage is truly happening, even as she struggles to make it to a scheduled meeting with her fiancé on time. Upon arriving at the meeting spot, she freezes, witnessing Gillis in an intimate and suspicious moment with Katerina, a junior member of the guild. The confrontation begins as she steps into the light, catching them red-handed. Gillis reacts with annoyance rather than shame, while Katerina wears a smug, knowing smile. He dismissively explains that he was only with Katerina, the daughter of Baron Medic, to get her advice on a wedding ring, claiming that Mia's own taste is far too plain. He goes even further, cruelly stating that a man of his standing needs playmates because she is too serious and boring to satisfy him, a sentiment Katerina gleefully supports. With a flourish, he presents a ring box, expecting her to be grateful for the gift and to overlook his blatant infidelity and insults. Instead of accepting the token, she stands her ground and firmly declares that he has completely misunderstood the situation, as she has no affection for him at all. Her mind flashes back to the years of cold treatment and the heavy burden of work she endured for the sake of the Hope-Rill family name, realizing she can no longer tolerate this life. Finally reaching her limit, she boldly announces that the engagement is over, leaving Gillis stunned and sputtering in rage as she reclaims her freedom. She flees the scene, the echoes of her former life fading behind her. Gillis calls out in a desperate attempt to stop her, but she doesn't look back, reflecting on how their engagement was merely a political convenience and how she had spent so much time trying to make it work. Tears stream down her face as she realizes the futility of her past efforts. She had spent years learning the rigid manners of the Boitez family and acting as a tireless assistant, all for a man who never truly valued her, leaving her feeling utterly pathetic. Lost in her grief, she accidentally collides with a solid figure. She stammers an apology, her eyes still cast downward in shame, until a familiar, calm voice speaks her name, cutting through her distress. Looking up, she is stunned to find Lord Crane August standing before her. The unexpected presence of the high-ranking noble in such a place leaves her momentarily speechless and confused. She wonders what could possibly bring a man of his stature out at such an hour. The Marquis, a renowned royal alchemist, maintains his usual composed and dignified air despite the late hour. He explains that he has come specifically to see her, mentioning a particular request that requires her expertise. The realization that he sought her out directly brings a look of genuine surprise to her face, momentarily distracting her from her heartbreak. Sensing her distress, he gently suggests they find a more private setting where they can discuss the matter in peace. He offers a calm presence that contrasts sharply with the chaos she just left behind. Soon, they are seated in a quiet room, though the weight of the situation still hangs heavy on her. She feels out of place, a mere assistant sitting across from a man of such immense talent and status, and she offers a sincere apology for any inconvenience she might have caused him. He dismisses her concerns, noting that his work always proceeded without issue when she was the one handling his requests. He expresses a subtle worry about the competence of her replacement, Katerina, whose lack of experience is already becoming apparent in the quality of the work. Despite his reassurances, she still feels a sense of responsibility for the disruption. He insists she shouldn't worry, reminding her of the many times her diligence has been invaluable to him, even as he looks over a document filled with disorganized notes that highlight the current mess. He leans in with a gentle smile, asking if she has a moment to spare for a conversation. Mia, still reeling from the day's events, looks up at him with wide, uncertain eyes. As she gazes out the window, she reflects on how unexpectedly kind the Marquis is, despite his high standing. She admits to herself that her engagement to Gillis was merely a political arrangement, and she feels no lingering attachment now that it has been severed. He acknowledges the gravity of the situation, noting that since wedding invitations had already been sent, the public image of her family is currently at its lowest point. He remarks on the audacity of the other party, calling them quite the noble with a hint of disdain for their behavior. She sits with her head bowed, her voice quiet as she explains that Gillis is not the type of man to simply let her go quietly. Having seen his persistence at the workshop many times, she fears he will continue to be a presence in her life. The Marquis warns her that if the rumors continue to spread, it will not only ruin her marriage prospects, but also severely impact her family's business. Mia's expression hardens as she realizes that she might lose the ability to work or live a normal life in the city. Her thoughts drift to the potential consequences for her family if the guild decides she is too valuable to lose, potentially dragging them into a messy conflict. She clenches her fist, desperate to avoid becoming a burden to those she loves. He looks down thoughtfully, suggesting there is a single way to change the course of her future. Mia, however, is already resigned to the idea of leaving her home behind and living a secluded life in the countryside to protect her family's reputation. She suddenly stands up, her eyes burning with a newfound resolve as she begs him to tell her what she must do. She declares that she is willing to do anything within her power to fix the situation and save her family from ruin. He meets her gaze and delivers a life-altering proposal. He wants her to work as the assistant to the royal alchemist. Mia is left speechless, her mouth agape as the weight of the offer sinks. Crane offers Mia a position as an assistant to a royal alchemist, a proposal that leaves her completely stunned. He reassures her that the responsibilities will be similar to the tasks she performed at the alchemy shop, suggesting that this is an opportunity she cannot afford to ignore. He continues by stating plainly that he has a high opinion of her abilities and sees no reason not to hire her. With a final, decisive word, he gives her until the following day to make her decision, leaving her reeling at the suddenness of the deadline. Left to her own thoughts, she grapples with the weight of the offer. The idea of a girl who cannot even wield magic serving as an assistant to a royal alchemist seems almost impossible, yet the prospect lingers in her mind. Elsewhere, Gillis sits in a lavish setting, swirling a glass of wine as he speaks with Katerina. He scoffs at the memory of Mia, labeling her a foolish woman who only served to stain his otherwise impeccable reputation. Katerina joins in, her tone dripping with mock pity for the girl they both look down upon. He goes on to boast about how he offloaded every tedious, menial task of his shop onto her. He recalls with a smirk how she would complete every assignment without a single word of complaint, making her the perfect subordinate to exploit. The conversation turns even more cruel as they discuss her current plight. Gillis admits he never saw her as a partner, but rather as a convenient tool for his experiments and the grueling preparation of his potions. To him, she was never a fiancé, but a useful servant. The reality of her situation is stark. She is now a woman whose engagement was broken, a discarded noble daughter whose name is being dragged through the mud. In the eyes of society, she has been pushed into a corner with no hope of escape. When questioned if there might be repercussions for how he treated her, he dismisses the concern entirely. He remains confident that his actions will have no negative impact on his own standing or career, viewing her as entirely inconsequential. His arrogance only grows as he declares that once he truly applies himself, he will produce results far superior to anything seen before. He laughs at the very notion of a person without magic attempting to brew potions, viewing it as an exercise in futility. He concludes his boast by asserting his own genius. He is certain that he will continue to produce high-quality potions and is on the verge of being promoted to a B-rank alchemist, fully convinced of his own inevitable success. He seethed with resentment, his gaze fixed on the woman who had once been his partner. To him, his future had been a path of guaranteed brilliance, a trajectory now marred by what he perceived as her incompetence. He vowed that he would not let this slight stand. He would ensure she was dragged down to the very depths of despair for the stain she had left on his career. Seeing his frustration, the young girl beside him chirped with a suggestion, wondering if he should apply for the position of royal alchemist assistant given his supposed talent. He dismissed the idea with a sharp, arrogant scoff, declaring that he was not the sort of man who would ever deign to serve under another. His mind drifted back to the early days of his alchemical training, recalling the enigmatic figure of Crane August. He remembered the rumors of the man's solitary nature and the sheer, overwhelming skill he had witnessed when he first saw the master at work. Swirling a glass of dark wine, he convinced himself that he had finally reached that same rarefied air, entering the realm of true geniuses. The memory of Crane's power no longer intimidated him. Instead, it fueled a burning desire to prove his own worth and eventually usurp the man from his prestigious throne. Meanwhile, as the morning sun began to rise over the city, Mia walked with heavy steps, her eyes weary from a sleepless night. She found herself still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, questioning why a royal alchemist would ever seek her out as an assistant, when such masters typically only chose their most prized disciples. Pushing through the heavy doors of the guild, she tried to steady her nerves, resolved to simply make it through the day despite the whirlwind of thoughts in her head. The familiar sounds of the bustling hall offered a small sense of normalcy amidst her internal confusion. Her arrival was immediately noticed by Alice, the guild receptionist, who called out her name with genuine warmth. A group of colleagues quickly gathered around her, their faces filled with concern and an eager desire to hear the truth about the rumors circulating through the streets. They crowded around her, offering gentle words of encouragement and urging her not to overextend herself during such a tumultuous time. The unexpected outpouring of support was a stark contrast to the coldness she had grown accustomed to. Alice leaned in, explaining that the news of her situation had already spread throughout the entire town. The group was quick to take her side, dismissing the harsh words of her former fiancé and his family as nothing more than the bitter ramblings of those who didn't truly know her worth. Overwhelmed by their kindness, she felt a lump form in her throat as she compared their warmth to the cold, calculated way her engagement had been severed. Though the pain of the betrayal still lingered, the genuine care of her friends gave her the strength to believe that she would be all right. She finds herself enveloped in a supportive embrace as Alice questions her future at the guild. Alice suggests that if she wishes to return, she should speak with the guild master, noting that the noble clients would be uneasy without her. While she had intended to resign that very day, the thought of continuing her work begins to take root. Before she can dwell on the decision, Alice playfully pulls her away, insisting they prioritize the morning's preparations and leave the heavy talk for later. Startled by the sudden movement, she stammers that her assigned seat is in the opposite direction, but her friend's momentum is unstoppable. Moments later, the bright voice of Katerina rings through the hall as she offers a cheerful greeting, unaware of the tension. Alice acknowledges her with a polite smile, while Mia realizes that her friend has intentionally moved her desk to ensure she doesn't have to face the girl directly. In the background, the consequences of recent events begin to surface as the guild master summons Katerina to account for her mishandling of noble requests. As the workday begins, the air becomes thick with the hushed whispers of colleagues speculating about the recent scandal. They trade rumors about her absence and the betrayal she suffered, with some claiming Gillis stole her fiancé, while others whisper that he had been pursuing her juniors behind her back. Seated at her news station, she tries to block out the noise, resigned to the fact that the gossip will persist until the drama finally fades. Her focus is shattered, however, when a sudden, sharp sound erupts nearby, demanding her attention. He approaches with a professional air, inquiring if she has reached a decision regarding their previous conversation and if she has any new concoctions ready for delivery. Mia, looking slightly overwhelmed, admits that while she has something, she is still merely an apprentice and not a certified alchemist. He explains that his superior, Lord Crane, is a specialist in the field, meticulously researching potions under a vast array of conditions, from varying temperatures to intense pressures. This rigorous process ensures that only the highest quality items are accepted. She gazes at the small glass vial in her hands, her eyes reflecting a deep-seated passion. The mere sight of a well-crafted potion makes her heart race with excitement. A detailed Gillis notes with a small, knowing smile, acknowledging her genuine love for the craft. He continues his explanation, noting that while he has been purchasing her work, a truly detailed appraisal is a complex task. With a final, decisive look, he informs her that this particular batch cannot be accepted for purchase. Her expression falters as the weight of his words sinks in. Gillis clarifies the issue, pointing out that it appears she attempted to reuse medicinal herbs after their primary components had already been extracted, a practice that no serious alchemy examiner would ever overlook. She attempts to offer a light-hearted defense, but Gillis remains unmoved, his gaze sharp as he stamps a document. To him, such a creation is nothing more than a counterfeit, and he warns her that while less experienced staff might be fooled, he will not tolerate such lapses in quality. He holds the bottle up to the light, admitting that the color and magical resonance are deceptively normal. However, the lack of actual restorative properties is a glaring flaw. He confesses that without his own rigorous labeling system, even he might have been momentarily misled. This harsh critique brings back memories of her own rigorous testing process alongside her companion. Together, they had meticulously checked the hue, the magical potency, and searched for any trace of impurities within the liquid. She remembers how her friend had beamed at her, holding the vial aloft with a confident grin. The other woman had insisted that the potion was excellent and that there were absolutely no issues with its quality. She stands in the present, grappling with these conflicting evaluations. Her friend Alice is a veteran at the Adventurers Guild and someone Mia trusts above all others. Yet the standards of a palace official like Gillis are far more exacting, leaving her caught between two very different worlds of alchemy. She stares at the bottle, the weight of the situation sinking in. These counterfeit potions are a danger to everyone who relies on them, and the realization of their potential harm is chilling. He smiles warmly, explaining that her unique ability to see through such deceptions is exactly why he wants her by his side as an assistant, valuing her keen eyes above all else. She gazes at the collection of vials, realizing that her skills, which were just moments ago dismissed as worthless, are actually the key to assisting someone of his immense stature. He can hardly believe his ears, his face contorted in shock as the nobleman confirms his intent to take the girl into his own royal workshop, bypassing the guild's hierarchy entirely. The surrounding guild members erupt into hushed whispers, stunned that the girl they were just pitying has been chosen by the prestigious Lord August to be his personal assistant. As she moves through the crowd, the atmosphere changes instantly. The looks of condescension have been replaced by a heavy, expectant silence from those who once looked down on her. She watches him, wondering if this sudden, public declaration was a deliberate act of kindness meant to overwrite the damaging rumors that had begun to circulate about her work. With a deep, respectful bow, she officially accepts the position, cementing her new path in front of the entire assembly and leaving her former life behind. As they walk away from the prying eyes of the guild, he asks if his sudden intervention was perhaps too meddlesome, but she quickly assures him of her profound gratitude. She asks why he would go so far to help her, but he simply dismisses the concern with a gentle smile, claiming he is merely returning a favor and telling her not to worry. He had barely finished his announcement when the guild members surged forward, led by Alice, who brandished a massive bouquet of flowers. She called out to Mia, congratulating her on her hard work and offering a boisterous farewell. As the others crowded around, Alice expressed their collective hope for her success in this new endeavor. Mia was stunned, looking down at the vibrant blossoms and realizing that her colleagues had gone to such lengths to celebrate her departure. Because of this overwhelming display of support, she found herself overcome with emotion, tears blurring her vision as she whispered her gratitude. Clutching the flowers tightly, she vowed to give her new role everything she had. However, she didn't miss the chance to playfully chide Crane about the legality of his recent sting operation involving the counterfeit potions. He countered that since no transaction actually took place, no crime was committed, though he jokingly complained about the stress the plan had put on his heart. Mia Hopebrill, now 18, has officially left her former guild. She stands before the imposing gates of the royal palace, ready to begin her new life as an assistant to a court alchemist. Looking up at the magnificent structure, she reflects on the prestige of the facility. Only 10 individuals in the entire kingdom hold the title of court alchemist, each granted their own private workshop within these walls. The status of alchemy in the Remeldi kingdom is unparalleled, largely due to this exclusive system. These elite practitioners are responsible for the nation's most vital functions, from maintaining barriers that repel monsters to ensuring bountiful harvests and fortifying buildings against disasters. Realizing the weight of her new environment, she quickly corrects her posture, feeling a sudden wave of self-consciousness. The people passing by exude an air of high authority, a stark reminder that while the system has stood for decades, the winds of change are beginning to blow. She takes a deep breath, hardening her resolve. Since she has been given this incredible opportunity to serve as an assistant, she vows to work harder than ever before and prove her worth. With a determined step, she navigates the opulent corridors of the palace. She passes other scholars and officials, her eyes wide as she takes in the sheer scale of the institution she now belongs to. Finally, she arrives at a heavy, ornate door. After a moment of hesitation, she knocks softly and announces her arrival with a polite greeting, her heart racing with anticipation. The door is opened by Lord Crane August, who welcomes her with a calm, inviting smile. She bows respectfully, formally introducing herself and expressing her gratitude for the position. As she steps inside, she is momentarily breathless. The workshop is a sprawling sanctuary of knowledge, filled with towering bookshelves, complex apparatuses, and the faint metallic scent of alchemical reagents. He notices her awe and points out the specialized equipment, some of which even he rarely uses. While he acknowledges that it will take time for her to adjust to such a sophisticated environment, she eagerly promises to learn everything she can, prompting him to gently suggest she not overexert herself so soon. He explains that he wants her to serve as an advisor, encouraging her to speak her mind freely despite her new position as an assistant. This unexpected request leaves her momentarily stunned, her eyes wide as she processes the weight of such a responsibility. As she looks at the neatly arranged vials in their case, she reflects on the strange turn of events. It was her ability to distinguish illegal potions that brought her here, a fact that still feels surreal. He continues, noting that simply having her observe the quality of his work is valuable in itself. She, however, remains puzzled, questioning what possible merit there could be for a man of his stature to have her around. Stepping forward with newfound resolve, she requests that he simply call her by her name, Mia, rather than formal titles. Her curiosity then shifts to the empty workshop as she inquires about the whereabouts of the other assistants. He meets her gaze calmly, revealing that there are no other assistants, nor does he have any intention of hiring more. This revelation prompts her to count them out loud, emphasizing that there are only 2 people in such a vast space. He dismisses her concern, arguing the larger crowd would only hinder his research. She persists, suggesting that hiring more experienced staff might be better for his reputation and to avoid backlash from others. He remains unmoved, his expression stoic as he ignores the social implications she fears. Turning his attention back to the task at hand, he announces they will begin crafting potions for official delivery. He instructs her to alert him immediately if she notices anything unusual during the process, to which she gives a firm, determined response. With a practiced hand, he ignites the burner, the flame flickering to life beneath a glass vessel. He carefully pours a clear liquid into a beaker, his movements precise and focused. The primary ingredient is Manhwa water, a substance rich in magical energy harvested from the countryside. It is an essential component for the high-grade potions they are about to create. He works with a practiced rhythm, his hands steady as he grinds the pre-treated medicinal herbs into a fine paste. Mia watches in awe, her eyes wide as she takes in the meticulous process. As he continues, the fluidity of his movements stands out. While she had seen Gillis brew potions many times, the level of skill displayed here is entirely different. Every motion is purposeful, flowing effortlessly into the next. Seeing such mastery sparks a quiet longing within her, a fleeting dream of one day standing as an alchemist herself, holding the fruits of her own labor. He catches her gaze, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips as he asks if watching the process is truly that entertaining. The sudden question jolts her from her reverie, her face flushing slightly at being caught staring. Turning his attention back to the mortar, he remarks that the work of alchemy is often quite plain and unassuming, lacking the immediate flair of other magical arts. She considers this, reflecting on how mages in the Night Orders, or those who hunt monsters for a living, possess a certain undeniable prestige and public recognition for their visible feats. In contrast, the world of alchemy often feels closed off, its products appearing in markets or workshops without the public ever witnessing the quiet dedication required to create them. Despite his humble assessment, she counters firmly, insisting that even if the work seems plain, alchemy is an absolute necessity that the world cannot do without. With a bright, determined smile, she explains that the brave souls fighting on the front lines, whether they be knights or adventurers, depend entirely on the potions produced through this very labor. Having seen firsthand at the guild how much a single potion can mean to a wounded warrior, her admiration for the craft has only deepened, fueling her desire to be a part of this vital world. She looks down, her expression clouded with a quiet melancholy, as she confesses her inability to master magic. In her mind, she recalls Gillis's frustrated efforts with alchemical flasks, a reminder of the struggles she witnessed while working as an assistant. Despite her own perceived shortcomings, the small tasks she could perform in the lab only deepened her yearning for the craft, a desire she had long tried to suppress. Her voice trembles with the weight of a harsh reality she has been forced to accept. No matter how often she dreams of brewing her own potions, the world believes that those devoid of magical talent are equally incapable of mastering alchemy. Crane explains that magic and alchemy are often misunderstood as the same thing, but they are fundamentally different. Mia listens intently, surprised by this revelation. He continues, noting that while powerful mages might also be skilled in alchemy, it's not a rule. Mia admits she's never heard of such a thing, and he points out that just because one can't use magic doesn't mean they can't use alchemy. Holding a flask, he explains that while both use mana, the way it's manipulated and the nature of the mana itself differ between the two disciplines. He admits that even he, despite his skills, can't use magic like a traditional mage. This realization hits her hard, sparking a flicker of hope in her eyes as she wonders if she might have potential after all. He goes on to describe how alchemy skills vary based on the individual's mana properties, mentioning that Gillis's work was mostly focused on specific yellow potions. He explains that the difficulty of alchemy changes depending on the magic circle used and the alchemist's compatibility with it. To demonstrate, he activates a magic circle, and a brilliant light erupts as he explains that by expanding the circle's range and applying mana, one can promote an alchemical reaction. She watches in awe as the liquid in the flask changes color, a beautiful gradation appearing, a hallmark of a high-level alchemist's skill. After the demonstration, he asks if anything seemed off, and she is stunned by how smooth the process was, noting that Gillis always seemed to struggle with it. He is surprised to hear that a C-rank alchemist would struggle so much with such a task. He ponders this, realizing that what he just did is considered basic alchemy, and asks her if she's ever seen anyone else perform alchemy besides Gillis. She confirms she hasn't, her expression thoughtful. Seeing an opportunity, he suggests that since they are at a good stopping point, she should try making a potion herself. She is completely taken aback by the suggestion, her eyes widening in shock. He reassures her, saying it's good for an assistant to experience the work firsthand, and that he wants to see how much work she was actually entrusted with. She agrees, though still a bit nervous, ready to take her first step into the world of alchemy. She began the preparation with practiced ease, carefully washing the medicinal herbs and ensuring every drop of excess moisture was wiped away. Her movements were methodical, treating the delicate leaves with the respect they deserved. Having finished the initial cleaning, she looked up with a confident smile, assuring her mentor that such tasks were second nature to her. He watched her with a quiet intensity, noting how naturally she handled the materials. The young woman continued her work, her focus never wavering as she moved through the steps of the process. Her mentor observed that her technique was flawless, lacking any of the hesitation one would expect from a novice. She then moved to the mortar and pestle, grinding the herbs with a steady, rhythmic motion. He advised her to keep the pace even and to warm the Manhwa water to body temperature, warning that too much force could disrupt the delicate balance of the ingredients. The mixture soon reached the desired consistency, a smooth, dark paste that shimmered slightly under the light. It was exactly as the instructions dictated. With the preparation complete, she announced her readiness, causing him to blink in surprise at her efficiency. He seemed momentarily unsettled by how quickly she had mastered the complex task, though he quickly masked his reaction. He then directed her to transfer the mixture into a glass flask, explaining that the final, most critical step involved infusing the liquid with mana to bind the elements together. She questioned if this was indeed the heart of the alchemical process, to which he confirmed that without a stable field, the potion would never form. Stepping closer to provide guidance, he placed his hand near hers on the flask, promising to stabilize the magical field while she focused on the infusion. The sudden proximity and the weight of the task ahead made her breath hitch for a moment. As they began, she felt a surge of powerful mana flowing from him, guiding her own energy into the vessel. It was an intimate and overwhelming sensation, seeing his magic intertwine with the ingredients she had so carefully prepared. The liquid within the flask suddenly erupted in a soft, brilliant glow as the reaction took hold. He urged her to watch closely, for the transformation was nearly complete, marking the birth of her very first alchemical creation. She holds the flask aloft, her eyes wide with disbelief as the liquid within shimmers with a soft, ethereal light. Beside her, Lord August watches with a knowing, satisfied smile, confirming that this is indeed the potion she created through her own hard work. Overwhelmed with joy, she lets out a triumphant cry, announcing to the room that she has finally succeeded. Mia holds up a flask of glowing liquid, her eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and triumph. She has finally succeeded in brewing a potion of her own making. Standing nearby, Crane observes her success with a composed nod, noting that with this level of skill, she is more than capable of operating as a professional alchemist. She looks toward him, her voice trembling slightly with hope as she asks for confirmation that she truly has what it takes to be an alchemist. He responds with a calm certainty, explaining that she has already surpassed the expectations of a mere apprentice. The nobleman gestures toward the bubbling beakers and organized tools of the trade, pointing out that her talent for potion making and her keen eye for quality would be wasted if she were kept in a subordinate role. It is clear he intends for her to take on significant responsibilities within a workshop. She insists that she is willing to take on any task required of her, eager to prove her worth. He watches her enthusiasm with interest, eventually asking if there is anything specific she has always dreamed of creating now that she has the means. Her mind immediately fills with possibilities, envisioning a range of enchanted objects from delicate rings and necklaces to intricate magical lamps. She even dares to imagine crafting something as legendary as a flying carpet, her ambition fueled by her newfound freedom. As they walk through the facility, she mentions her experience managing inventory during her time under Gillis, assuring him that she is well-versed in the logistical side of the craft. He acknowledges this, adding that he also needs her help with maintaining the workshop's cleanliness and performing regular equipment inspections. The young alchemist then turns her attention to the practicalities of their work, inquiring about the current system for procuring medicinal herbs. He explains that while he has a regular shop he frequents, he would prefer to delegate the selection and purchasing of materials to her, trusting her judgment. He offers a word of caution regarding the shopkeeper, describing her as a notoriously stubborn and eccentric old woman. He warns that she has a habit of overcharging or even chasing away customers who fail to meet her personal standards, making the task of sourcing herbs a potentially daunting challenge. She pauses, a look of recognition crossing her face as she asks if he is referring to a woman named Barbara. He is visibly taken aback by her familiarity with the name, his curiosity piqued by how she could possibly know such a formidable figure. He listened intently as Mia spoke of the shopkeeper Barbara, her eyes lighting up as she mentioned the delicious mugwort machi the old woman occasionally shared with her. It was a small, humanizing detail that stood in stark contrast to the woman's fearsome reputation. Because of her familiarity with the vendor, he decided to entrust the entire herb inventory to her, though he cautioned her to remain vigilant against being overcharged. Mia accepted the responsibility, privately reflecting on her long history with the shop. She recalled the years spent running errands to that very shop while serving under Gillis, confident that her long-standing relationship would prevent any such issues. To her, Barbara was a known quantity, not a threat. She was surprised when he remarked that an assistant's disposition can greatly affect an alchemist's output, finding his concern for her well-being unusual. When the topic of her previous compensation arose, she somberly clarified that her work for the Boitez family had been entirely unpaid. Her revelation of past exploitation left him stunned. The idea of a noble fiancé being treated as an unpaid, overworked laborer was abhorrent to him. He immediately resolved to provide her with a high salary and formal recognition, ensuring she would never be taken advantage of again. As he explained that these were merely basic labor rights, she felt a wave of anxiety, the sudden shift from mistreatment to extreme favor feeling almost overwhelming. She struggled to reconcile her past experiences with this new, respectful reality. Moments later, she reviewed the official contract, which detailed benefits like paid leave and injury compensation. Terms so favorable, she couldn't find a single reason to hesitate. It was a binding agreement with the state, offering security she had never known. She listened as he turned the conversation toward her personal life, inquiring about the status of her engagement annulment with a serious expression. The professional atmosphere shifted slightly as he delved into her private affairs. He was caught off guard when she admitted the paperwork was still being finalized and that she hadn't yet informed her father, a name that caused him to recoil in genuine shock. Hopebrill. The weight of that surname clearly carried immense significance. He finally made the connection to the legendary former vice commander of the Royal Knights, the man feared as the Ogre God, while she casually confirmed her lineage. She noted that her father was currently away on duty, unaware of the seismic shift in her life. He listens intently as she admits that while the truth is difficult to voice, there is more to her hesitation than just her family name. She carries a burden of personal history that complicates her new position. She presents a formal letter, explaining that despite her efforts to reach out, her father refuses to acknowledge her even when she addresses him directly. This revelation leaves the nobleman behind her in a state of bewildered silence as he realizes the depth of her family's dysfunction. Later that night, she sits at her desk under the starlight, her writing interrupted only by a servant's formal summons. She walks through the dimly lit halls of her home, her thoughts consumed by the official request to annul her engagement. She reflects on the coldness that has permeated these walls since her mother's passing and her brother's departure for the Knights, leaving her isolated and alone in her own house. Entering the study, she finds the imposing figure of her father silhouetted against the window. Without turning, he issues a sharp, cold command for her to sit, his presence radiating a stern authority that fills the room. Mia stands before her father, the general. He fixes her with a sharp, questioning gaze, stating he has something to ask. She feels a chill of apprehension, realizing that declaring the annulment of her engagement without his prior consent might have been a reckless move. On the desk lies the formal document of annulment. It is already bearing the official signature of the Boitez family, a cold confirmation of the severed tie. She recalls Gillis's calculated cruelty. He had intended to paint her as the discarded party to protect his own reputation, a realization that makes her blood boil at her own past naivety. Continuing her explanation, she recounts the moment she encountered Gillis at the Adventurers Guild, caught red-handed in his infidelity. Her father listens in silence, his expression unreadable as the details of the betrayal unfold. Her knuckles whiten as she clenches her fists, describing how Gillis showed absolutely no remorse for his actions. It was his blatant lack of honor that drove her to take such drastic measures. Bowing her head in a gesture of contrition, she admits to the lapse in protocol regarding the timing of her report. From behind his desk, the commander simply acknowledges her words, his voice steady as he says he understands. This calm response catches her off guard. She quickly adds an apology for any stain her actions might have brought upon the Hopebrill name, but he remains focused on the papers in his hand. Instead of the expected reprimand, he looks up and asks a question that leaves her momentarily speechless. He wants to know how she was hurt in all of this. He clarifies his concern, asking if she suffered emotionally or if the family's reputation was truly his primary concern. Then, to her utter shock, the high-ranking commander bows his head toward her, offering a sincere apology. She tries to protest, but he insists, explaining that since he was the one who arranged the engagement in the first place, the responsibility for its failure lies with him. He reassures her that he has been watching over her all along. He acknowledges the situation, his gaze fixed on the formal document that signifies the end of his daughter's engagement. Looking down at a second set of papers, he reveals that he had already prepared his own request for annulment, intending to throw at the Boitez family if they ever mistreated her. He gently tells her that she never should have had to carry this burden alone, prompting a tearful expression of gratitude from her. She is taken aback by his foresight, but she wonders aloud if Gillis truly believed he was being kind by ending things. He scoffs at the notion, pointing out that the document from the Boitez family conveniently omitted any mention of the alimony or compensation she was rightfully owed. His skepticism turns to genuine shock as the full scope of her current life comes to light. He demands to know if she is truly serving as the assistant to the royal alchemist, and if the influential Lord August is her benefactor. He struggles to reconcile the image of his daughter with the prestigious role she now holds, wondering how she managed to impress a man known as a once-in-a-century genius. After a moment of silent contemplation, he resolves to handle the legalities himself, assuring her that her honor will be protected and the matter of compensation will be settled once and for all. Taking up his pen, he begins to draft the necessary correspondence to the involved parties while she watches in quiet appreciation. She takes this moment of relative calm to ask a question that has long haunted her: why he never addressed her as his daughter or even used her name. He turns away, his posture stiffening with a sudden, awkward bashfulness as he confesses that he simply lacks the grace to interact comfortably with women. The weight of his own social inadequacy seems to press down on him as he admits he never quite knew the right way to speak to her. He eventually dismisses her, urging her to return to her work and stop distracting him. Though he adds a gruff permission for her to address him, however, she finds most comfortable. As she steps out of the office, a small smile plays on her lips at the realization that his coldness was merely a mask for his own clumsiness. She offers a final, silent thanks, hoping that they might slowly begin to walk the same path as a family once more. Outside the guild building, two men notice Gillis Boitez entering. They whisper about him, noting that he's the heir to the Boitez family, which has recently fallen on hard times. He overhears their gossip, his expression hardening as the words sting. To himself, he reasons that it was only natural for the Hope-Brill family to abandon him once his family status began to crumble. He approaches the reception desk with a haughty air, determined to prove his worth. Identifying himself as Gillis Boitez, he presents a card and a vial, stating he is there to submit a potion for the B-rank alchemist promotion exam. The receptionist examines the card and the potion, her eyes widening slightly as she recognizes the name. There's a palpable hesitation in her movements as she processes the request from the disgraced noble. The young man slams his hand onto the counter, the sudden noise echoing through the hall and startling the woman. He snarls for her to hurry with the paperwork, claiming his time is far too valuable to be wasted on her incompetence. He turns away, seething with a quiet, burning resentment. In his mind, everyone is looking down on him, and he blames Mia for spreading the rumors that have turned him into a social pariah. He is suddenly interrupted by a calm voice asking if he's all right. The unexpected concern catches him off guard, causing him to stop in his tracks. He turns to find the guild master himself standing before him, a rare and imposing presence. Surprised that such a high-ranking official would speak to him directly, he tries to mask his agitation, insisting that he is perfectly fine. The elder looks at him with a steady, knowing gaze through his spectacles. He clarifies that his concern isn't for the young man's personal well-being, but rather a worry that his skills in the art of alchemy might have begun to deteriorate. Gillis stands stunned as the guild master continues his interrogation, questioning if the young man can even perform alchemy without the help of his former fiancée, Mia. He dismisses the idea that her absence matters, insisting that she only handled menial chores and that his alchemy is entirely his own work, gesturing to his previous submissions as proof. The guild master points out that even a change in assistant can affect the final result, especially when magical energy is involved in the process, as he holds up a potion bottle for inspection. The young alchemist is internally fuming, insulted by the suggestion that his quality has dropped, yet he views this scrutiny as a golden opportunity to prove his individual worth. He continues to make excuses, claiming his current work isn't his best because it's the final day for submissions, and promises to bring something truly impressive for the next delivery. He turns and leaves the guild hall in a huff, leaving the guild master behind to stare intently at the potion bottle, hoping for a genuine surprise in the future. While he remains in thought, she reflects on her own situation, relieved that her father agreed to break the engagement and preparing to deliver the official papers to the Boitez family. She is suddenly confronted by Gillis in the street, his expression dark and demanding as he stops her in her tracks, catching her completely off guard. He isn't alone. As Katerina watches the encounter with surprise, he demands to know what Mia wants, his tone aggressive as they stand in the middle of the thoroughfare. Gillis stands tall, a smirk playing on his lips as he delivers what he believes to be a crushing blow to Mia's standing. He declares that her time has passed and that he has finally secured the coveted position of assistant to Lord Crane August, leaving her with no place left to go. He doesn't stop there, dismissing her previous efforts and claims as nothing more than embarrassing fabrications. Beside her, Alice listens in stunned silence, unable to reconcile his harsh words with the reality of Mia's hard work. The young man lets out a sharp laugh, mocking the transparency of what he calls her lies. He suggests that even the most naive child could have seen through her supposed accomplishments, urging her to come up with a better story next time. As the tension rises, Alice's mind drifts back to the guild's recent turmoil. She remembers that Katerina was nowhere to be found during the transition, having been summoned by the guild master to answer for her mishandling of noble affairs in a private lecture. Returning to the present, he continues to pour salt in the wound, labeling Mia a pitiful woman who has lost her path. He relishes the thought of his own upcoming success as the true assistant, leaving her to wallow in her supposed failure. With a haughty stride, he begins to walk away, his voice trailing back as he proclaims that only the elite, those like himself, are destined for the rank of royal alchemist. He dismisses the idea of anyone else even attempting to reach his level. He pauses, sensing her lingering doubt, and turns back with a sharp question. He demands to know if she honestly believes he hasn't been taking his alchemical studies seriously, accusing her of underestimating his dedication. He reflects on his recent experiences, convinced that seeing Lord Crane's mastery has finally awakened his own latent potential. In his mind, the gulf between his skills and hers has become an unbridgeable chasm, and he is eager to demonstrate this new power. She can only stare at him, her expression one of pure, unadulterated confusion. The sheer depth of his delusion and misplaced confidence is so profound that she finds herself at a total loss for words. He finishes his tirade by warning her that apologies are useless now. He is determined to prove that she was the only thing holding him back, and that his true alchemy will soon be revealed to the world, solidifying his place at the top. He is approached by Alice, who presents him with a document stating that the Hope Brill family has officially accepted the annulment of the engagement. She hands him a copy for his records, confirming the legal end of his ties to Mia's family. He stares at the document, a dark, satisfied expression crossing his face as the reality of his victory and newfound freedom sinks in. Turning his attention back to the room, he boasts that his time for leisure is over, as he will now begin his work in earnest. Alice tries to maintain professionalism, reminding him not to be jealous just because he can't be the court alchemist assistant, while Mia watches, her frustration mounting at his sheer arrogance. She is left standing in the hallway as he makes a dismissive remark about not having time to waste on a pitiful woman, walking away with Alice and leaving her in a heavy silence. Left to her thoughts, she realizes that the ties between them have been completely severed. She reflects on the herbs she had left behind, concluding that disposing of them was the right choice after all. She recalls his cruel words. He had mocked her for thinking her work was of any value, claiming that the high-quality potions he would create wouldn't need such trash. He had even bragged about preparing for a large-scale transaction with the knights, leaving her to wonder if he truly understood the value of the materials he discarded. Unable to stay silent, she calls out to him, protesting that disposing of the medicinal herbs was going too far. He simply glances back with a smirk, noting her desperation and mockingly telling Alice not to bully her too much. As they disappear from sight, she clenches her fist tightly. The realization that their connection is truly, finally over brings a sharp, cold clarity to her mind. Shaking off the negativity, she resolves to change her mood and head to a local herb shop to buy new supplies. However, the man who insulted her has already arrived there, only to find himself being screamed at by the fierce shopkeeper. He is suddenly pelted with buckets and water as the elderly woman calls him a stink bug and demands he never return. He flees in a panic, his earlier arrogance completely shattered by her wrath. He recoils in absolute disgust as a thick, pungent cloud of smoke erupts around him, the result of a specialized stink bomb thrown by the shopkeeper. The stench is so overwhelming that he can barely breathe, clutching his face as he flees the scene. Mia watches from a distance, stunned by the effectiveness of the auntie's unconventional defense against the arrogant alchemist. Watching him flee in disgrace, she approaches the elderly woman, who is still catching her breath from the encounter. The shopkeeper looks up, her expression softening when she recognizes Mia, and apologizes for the unpleasant scene caused by the insolent brat who had been pestering her. Mia assures her that she saw the whole thing and suggests that perhaps it was just divine retribution for his behavior. Leaving the street behind, she enters the quiet sanctuary of the herb shop, taking the rows of dried plants and mysterious jars lining the shelves. The contrast between the peaceful interior and the chaos outside is striking, leading her to reflect on the state of the world, where someone as incompetent and rude as Gillis could somehow hold a C-rank alchemist title. Observing her guest's contemplative silence, the shopkeeper settles behind her counter with a knowing smile. She leans forward, her eyes twinkling with a mix of business savvy and genuine kindness, and asks what Mia is looking for today, promising to offer her a special price as a reward for witnessing her triumph over the unwanted visitor. The shopkeeper sighs deeply, lamenting the current state of the Alchemist Guild and the lack of competent C-rank alchemists. Mia can only offer a nervous laugh in response, acknowledging the harsh reality of their profession's decline. She recalls how quickly the atmosphere soured, noting that Gillis and the older woman began bickering almost the moment they stepped inside. It is clear to her that their stubborn personalities are a disastrous match. Realizing she must tread carefully to avoid being caught in their conflict, she is startled when the shopkeeper suddenly asks what is troubling her. She quickly waves it off, insisting that everything is fine. The elder woman warns that any careless remark could spark rumors that would tarnish the prestigious Hope Brill name. She stresses the importance of discretion, while the quiet exterior of the shop stands in stark contrast to the tension within. Shifting the conversation with a sharp look, she asks what brought the young woman to the shop today. The sudden change in topic catches the girl off guard for a moment. In response to the question, the young woman explains that she is there to restock their supply of medicinal herbs, as they have run dangerously low on ingredients for potions. The shopkeeper listens intently as the girl gestures toward the empty shelves in her mind. The girl mentions that the man who was just forced out had discarded all their previous materials in a fit of pique. Looking at a crate of fresh herbs, the shopkeeper wonders if he had simply failed in his previous attempts at alchemy. With a bright smile, she shares the news that her circumstances have changed significantly, as she has been serving as Lord Crane's personal assistant since the previous day. Her words prompt the shopkeeper to search her memory before identifying the man as Crane August, the esteemed royal alchemist. Hearing the name, the girl reflects on how long it has been since anyone addressed her by her own name. She lets out a hearty laugh, dismissing the importance of names and titles altogether. To her, the only thing that truly matters in this world is whether or not one's life is interesting. She sits behind her counter, a figure of quiet authority in the cluttered shop. Mia watches her, reflecting on how the world might see this woman as merely eccentric or stubborn. To Mia, however, she is a person of rare integrity who refuses to judge anyone by their social standing or title, a trait that makes her truly remarkable. Stepping forward, the young assistant presents a sturdy wooden case filled with rows of glass vials. She explains that she has brought the potions Lord Crane requested as part of their ongoing trade. The shopkeeper peers into the box, her sharp eyes scanning the inventory with a practiced, skeptical gaze as she acknowledges the delivery. Without hesitation, the older woman uncorks one of the vials and takes a sharp swig, only to immediately recoil with a look of pure revulsion. She lets out a loud, guttural cry of disgust, complaining bitterly about the foul taste and demanding that Mia tell the royal alchemist to make his concoctions more palatable. Mia can only offer a weak defense, knowing well that the woman's standards for quality are as high as her temper. Once the initial shock of the bitter brew subsides, the shopkeeper regains her composure and asks if Mia is ready to see the day's offerings. She treats the young woman with a mix of professional bluntness and a strange, almost grandmotherly familiarity, inviting her to inspect the latest stock of herbs. The shelves and baskets are overflowing with a vibrant array of botanical specimens. There are rare roots, dried leaves of varying textures, and bundles of fresh stalks, all meticulously organized. The quality is undeniable, showcasing a selection that would rival even the most prestigious guild's inventory. As Mia leans in to examine the goods, she feels the shopkeeper's presence looming closely behind her. The older woman watches her every move with an intensity that is both unnerving and expectant. Mia realizes that in this small, cramped space, there is no escaping the shopkeeper's watchful eye or her silent pressure to make a purchase. Holding up a bundle of leafy greens, the shopkeeper's expression turns stern as she accuses Mia of hesitating. She claims to have set these specific herbs aside, just for her, implying that any delay in buying them would be a personal affront to her efforts. The young assistant quickly realizes she is being subjected to a classic sales tactic. She notices that the shopkeeper has cleverly bundled high-quality, fresh herbs with some that are clearly past their prime, attempting to clear out old stock under the guise of a special deal. Despite the blatant upselling, Mia considers the offer, knowing the rare items in the bunch are still worth the price. Suddenly, the shopkeeper's tone shifts from business to intrigue as she leans in with a conspiratorial look. She asks if Mia has heard the latest scandal involving the nobility, specifically a high-ranking official whose reputation was shattered after his infidelity was exposed just before his wedding. The sudden transition to gossip catches Mia completely off guard. She continues the tale with a cynical smirk, noting how pathetic it is for a man to lose everything over a moment of indiscretion. Mia marvels at how much information the woman manages to gather from within her shop, realizing that the auntie is not just a merchant of herbs, but a keeper of the city's most whispered secrets. She continues the scandalous tale, noting with a smirk that the situation is quite amusing because it was the woman who initiated the split. Mia, clutching her newly purchased herbs, find it hard to believe that a noble woman would cast a man aside, but the older woman insists that seeing a highborn man dumped is a rare treat. Listening to the update, she's impressed by how quickly the young alchemist gathered the news. As the girl explains, she only just heard the details this morning. The shopkeeper continues, noting that the lady in the scandal was so desperate for freedom that she even waived her right to alimony to speed up the process. Watching the girl's attention drift, the woman continues her work as her companion's gaze falls upon a basket filled with dark, jagged crystals that shimmer with an inner light. She reflects on the gossip, wondering if the noblewoman's freedom was worth the steep social cost. Noticing the contents of the basket, she points them out with a look of pure shock, but the shopkeeper remains unimpressed. The older woman simply shrugs, claiming they are merely common magic ores, the kind of ordinary materials any alchemist would use without a second thought. Reeling internally, Mia stares at the high-quality minerals being sold so casually, despite the shopkeeper's dismissal. Knowing that magic ores of this purity are incredibly rare and command a fortune, she can only wonder why they are being offered at a standard rate. Mia examines a crystal, recalling Lord Crane's observation about her rare talent for discerning magical potency at a glance. She decides to use this gift to craft a special item for Alice. She stands in the shop, brow furrowed in deep thought as she weighs her options. The shopkeeper, Auntie, notices her struggle and asks what's wrong, warning her against trying to sell low-grade ores. She clarifies that these materials are for her own personal use, and she'll be paying from her own purse. The older woman's eyes widen in surprise, and she insists on inspecting the selection carefully. She admits she hasn't even informed her assistant of this errand yet, explaining her need for secrecy. The shopkeeper questions why she would spend her own money when, as a court alchemist, she could simply use the royal budget. Her mention of wanting to work under Lord Crane triggers a raucous, cackling laugh from the shopkeeper. The older woman teases that the girl has finally become a real alchemist, even if she's a bit of a late bloomer. The older woman reminds her of her old dream to join the court alchemists, a goal she seems to have momentarily forgotten. She points out how the girl's face lit up like a child's while she was picking out the materials. She pushes a box toward the girl with a smirk, offering it as a reward for the entertaining conversation. She tells her to take whatever she needs, prompting a skeptical question about whether this is some new scheme. She tosses several high-quality magic stones into the air, ignoring the girl's suspicion. As the girl catches them clumsily, the shopkeeper tells her to learn how to accept a favor with grace. Her expression softens as she remarks that the girl reminds her of her own younger self. She leans in, her tone becoming serious, as she prepares to impart some crucial wisdom. She holds a crystal aloft and explains that the first step is to master the formation skill. Only then will she be able to manipulate minerals with true freedom. She waves goodbye to the young woman, her heart light after the successful visit. The shopkeeper calls out a cheerful farewell, encouraging her to return whenever she needs more supplies, while the girl steps out into the street with a satisfied smile. She is greeted by a familiar face waiting outside, his expression shifting to one of pure bewilderment as he watches her emerge. He can't help but wonder what sort of lopsided deal she just struck to end up in such a state, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. He watches as the young woman struggles under a massive basket overflowing with heavy magic ores, her small frame straining under the weight. She explains with a strained smile that after telling the shopkeeper about her new status as an alchemist, she was gifted this overwhelming bounty. She looks down at the pile of shimmering stones, realizing the sheer scale of the gift is more suited for a blacksmith than a lone alchemist. It dawns on her that the old woman's generosity was likely a playful test of her physical endurance, a realization that brings a nervous sweat to her brow. She listens as her companion notes the difficulty of mastering the formation skill alongside her potion making, but she remains undeterred. With a clenched fist and a bright smile, she declares her intent to challenge herself with everything she can now that her path is clear. She doesn't notice him watching her, deep in thought about the shopkeeper's unusual behavior. It is rare for that woman to show such interest in anyone, let alone hand over high-grade materials so freely, leading him to suspect a deeper motive behind the gift. She reacts with shock when he suggests that she might be being groomed as a successor. The idea of taking over such a formidable woman's legacy is a weight even heavier than the oars on her back, causing her to cry out in frantic denial. Confused, she questions whether the shopkeeper is even an alchemist, having assumed she was merely a supplier. He clarifies that the woman is a legendary figure in the craft, far more than a simple merchant, which only adds to the young woman's growing sense of awe. She listens as he warns her that the old woman has a penchant for interesting people and likely sees something unique in her. He advises caution, noting that while the shopkeeper is a source of great knowledge, she is also known for her unpredictable and mischievous nature. He shifts gears and presents her with a daunting new task, requesting the immediate mass production of 200 potions. She can only stare in disbelief at the list he holds, the reality of her new professional life hitting her with full force. Mia stands in the shop, her eyes wide with disbelief as she repeats the number, 200. Crane confirms the order, explaining that while it isn't a single request, the total from various clients has reached that staggering amount. She clutches her head in frustration, arguing that if he had handled the individual transactions through the Alchemist Guild from the start, there wouldn't be such a problem. He simply watches her outburst, unmoved by her complaints about the process from preparation to delivery. The weight of her situation sinks in as she recalls his reputation as an elite royal alchemist. She had hoped for a gentler teaching style, but his expectations are as rigid as his posture, leaving her feeling completely overwhelmed by the task ahead. He adds a final, crushing detail. The deadline is the end of next week. The announcement leaves her trembling, the sheer impossibility of the time frame making her head spin as she realizes how little time she actually has. Later, standing alone amidst her brewing equipment, she stares at a flask with a mix of apprehension and resolve. She reasons that if she can dedicate this much time to alchemy, the experience itself must be invaluable, and she vows to give it her all. When she shares a renewed commitment, he offers a rare, encouraging smile, telling her that her attitude is good. She feels a surge of joy, realizing that this isn't just about the work, but about truly learning to be an alchemist. Stepping outside, she gazes up at the building that houses her workshop, her mind filled with dreams of the future. She imagines a day when she might run her own shop or even manage a whole atelier, provided she can master the skills necessary to stand on her own. Returning to the task at hand, she prepares to begin her work under his watchful eye. She knows this is her chance to make her second life truly meaningful, and she is determined to become a first-class alchemist. With her goggles pulled down and a look of fierce concentration, she readies herself for the first batch. This is her first real commission, and she knows she cannot afford to be half-hearted. She must pour every ounce of her spirit into these potions. As she begins the delicate process, she reminds herself that this is no longer just practice or a hobby. This is a job for people who truly need these potions. And with Crane's reputation and the trust of the clients on the line, she feels the full weight of her responsibility. She begins by carefully filling a wooden tub with lukewarm water, immersing the medicinal herbs to wash them thoroughly. Though she wonders if such a meticulous step is truly required, she proceeds with practiced care. After the washing is complete, she lays the herbs out one by one in a sunny spot to dry. While she acknowledges that drying isn't a strictly mandatory part of the potion-making process, she maintains her methodical approach. Crane watches closely as she explains that this preliminary step helps draw out impurities, which she refers to as poison, making the subsequent magical manipulation much easier. He notes that for an alchemist of his caliber, such a step might be redundant, but he acknowledges its utility for others. She recalls that she hadn't performed this level of preparation the previous day, primarily because those potions weren't intended for sale. Now, with a professional commission on the line, her standards have shifted. Mia admits with a sheepish smile that she had taken some shortcuts before out of a simple desire to see the results of her alchemy quickly. He finds her blunt honesty about cutting corners in front of a royal alchemist to be quite bold. She reflects on how the tedious nature of preparation can often be disheartening, yet she is determined to improve the quality of her work through these small efforts. Her experience at the guild has taught her that a reputation for being serious and thorough is invaluable. As the silence stretches, she confesses to feeling a bit nervous under his intense scrutiny. He reassures her, explaining that because he usually works in isolation, observing another's workflow provides a rare and valuable opportunity for his own research. This revelation strikes her. Alchemy is indeed a secretive and closed profession where one rarely sees another at work unless they are a master and apprentice. For someone like him, who has always produced results through solitary effort, her methods are a novel subject of study. Mia is momentarily stunned by the idea that her basic preparation, something she has done for years as a mere apprentice, could be of interest to him. The realization that her role as an assistant involves more than just menial labor begins to sink in. As the water in the tub grows murky with sediment, he examines a sample, noting the difficulty in discerning whether the cloudiness is merely dirt or the poison she mentioned. She prepares to refresh the water, continuing the cycle of preparation under his watchful eye. He listens intently as Mia explains that washing the herbs in the same water for too long makes her hands tingle, leading her to believe there's a toxic element involved. She suggests it might even be harmful to the human body. Intrigued, he decides to take a sample of the wastewater for further investigation. Though Mia notes that while it might be harmful in large quantities, small amounts are likely fine. He reflects on how common it is for people to consume potions without realizing they might contain such hazardous components. While these details are second nature to Mia, they are entirely new data points for him. He admits a genuine curiosity about the exact chemical makeup of these impurities. Mia expresses surprise, having assumed a high-ranking alchemist like him would already possess such detailed data. But he explains that studying living plants is difficult because their composition varies wildly based on the region and season, a field usually left to farmers and botanists. Holding the test tube up to the light, he suggests that his research in alchemy might actually be able to help in these other fields as well. He believes that instead of leaving things unknown, they should be analyzed, even if it's unclear whether the resulting data will be useful. Mia watches him, struck by his dedication. She realizes that his desire to contribute to fields beyond just potion making is exactly why he was chosen as a royal alchemist at such a young age. Mia stands in the workshop, her goggles pushed up as she observes the bubbling concoction. She feels a surge of confidence, having finally grasped the rhythm of the mixing process. As she works, Gillis approaches, suggesting that she might as well deliver the finished goods early. He observes her progress with a calculating gaze, noting that she is rapidly approaching his own pace of production. She considers his words while meticulously handling the equipment. Preparation for potion making is a time-consuming endeavor, a task she previously managed during her rare breaks at the Adventurers Guild, but now she can dedicate her full mental energy to it. The young woman realizes that her new circumstances as a noble's daughter impose a strict schedule. She must finish her work before the sun sets. This constraint has forced her to find ways to increase her efficiency, turning the workshop into a place of intense focus. He breaks the silence by asking her directly what her thoughts are on becoming a professional alchemist. The question catches her off guard, making her pause her work to look at him with a mix of surprise and uncertainty. They continue to discuss the intricacies of the craft, with Mia explaining that the preparation phase accounts for nearly 90% of the total effort. She realizes that the actual mixing, which she is currently doing, is only a small fraction of the entire process. A sudden, jarring realization begins to take shape in her mind as she looks at the vials before her. If the preparation was the bulk of the work, then the person who handled the final steps was doing very little in comparison. Her eyes widen in shock as she connects the dots, wondering if Gillis has been taking advantage of her efforts all along. The thought that he might have been slacking off while she toiled over the preparations fills her with a growing sense of indignation. She clutches her head in frustration, feeling foolish for not seeing through his facade sooner. He had always made the work seem so arduous and demanding, but now she sees it was likely a calculated performance to keep her subservient. Despite the sting of betrayal, she takes a deep breath and decides to channel her energy into her work rather than resentment. With a renewed sense of purpose, she sets an ambitious goal for herself, determined to master her craft on her own terms. She pauses, her eyes widening as Gillis informs her that producing 200 potions in a week is typically the workload for 4 seasoned alchemists. He warns her that such a task demands an exhausting amount of concentration and mana, far beyond what a normal apprentice should handle. She counters his warning by reminding him that there are only 2 people in the entire workshop, including herself. Gillis remains indifferent, coolly stating that he never forced the responsibility onto her, but that she was the one who set the ambitious goal. While she watches him with a mix of disbelief and annoyance, he lets out a weary sigh, admitting to himself that perhaps he's been too lenient lately. He acts as though he is the one suffering, while she privately compares his demanding nature to that of a slave driver. Ignoring his complaints, she focuses intently on her work, carefully grinding ingredients in a mortar. She reminds herself to be meticulous, wanting the final product to be perfect for the sake of the clients who are counting on her. As the day progresses, she feels a sense of accomplishment, realizing that her past hardships and the repetitive preparation tasks were not for nothing. Gillis watches her from a distance, noting her steady hand and the high quality of the brew she is producing. While she finds her rhythm, the scene shifts to Gillis, who is screaming in frustration in a separate part of the lab. He cannot understand why he is failing to produce results, desperately asserting his own genius as he stares at a mess of failed experiments. He slams his fist onto the workbench, his mind racing with confusion. He has followed every step, the preparation, the processing, everything he used to make her do, yet the necessary alchemical reaction simply refuses to trigger for him. He continues to struggle, his movements becoming frantic and sloppy as he tries to force the potion to form. He curses his inability to produce a high-quality brew, convinced that his innate talent should allow him to succeed without the grueling effort he sees her put in. His frantic internal monologue is interrupted when Alice opens the door, calling out to him. She informs him that the representative from Lord Wolfwood's estate has arrived to collect their order, catching him in a state of visible disarray and panic. He turns to her, his face pale and slick with sweat, and delivers a pathetic excuse. He claims to be suffering from sudden alchemy slump, using it as a shield to hide the fact that he is currently incapable of producing a single potion. He snaps at his assistant, his voice laced with a desperate defensiveness as he insists that his alchemy has simply changed. When she tentatively suggests that Mia's absence might be the cause, he scoffs at the notion, dismissing his former partner as nothing more than a menial laborer. He grows increasingly agitated as she reminds him of the Duke's pending order, arrogantly claiming he discarded the previous potions because they were tainted by Mia's touch and boasting that he can recreate them in mere hours. Turning away to hide his mounting anxiety, the alchemist declares his intention to personally persuade the client, mentioning offhandedly that it has been quite some time since they last met face-to-face. This casual admission leaves Alice frozen in shock, her eyes widening as the implications of his words begin to sink in. As the sound of his retreating footsteps fades, a chilling realization dawns on her. If he hasn't met with their primary clients in months, then who has been the true face of the guild's business? Beside her, a forgotten bottle lies overturned, its contents spilling across the floor like the unraveling of a carefully constructed lie. A crate filled with neatly arranged glass vials is presented, the liquid inside shimmering under the light. The delivery of the requested potions is confirmed with a professional nod, marking the completion of a significant order. She checks the final items off her list, having successfully delivered 200 potions to the guild. Gillis stands nearby, offering his continued support and praising her transition to becoming a royal alchemist assistant, a role she has embraced with her usual diligence. Later, she is greeted warmly by a familiar face as she enters a bustling restaurant. Alice calls out her name with excitement, delighted to see her friend after what feels like a long time, and they quickly settle in to catch up over a meal at the guild-affiliated establishment. They sit together, and Alice marvels at the fact that her friend is now crafting potions for the royal alchemists. She examines one of the vials, noting the high quality, while the young alchemist modestly admits that she simply does her best, though she acknowledges the change in her circumstances and the prestige of her new position. The conversation turns to the subtle differences in the potions, with Alice suggesting that the atmosphere of the royal workshop and its state-of-the-art equipment must be influencing the results. Her friend listens thoughtfully, considering how much her environment has truly shifted since leaving her previous position and how it affects her craft. She is momentarily taken aback when Alice reacts with a sudden burst of energy, leaning in close. The realization hits that the sheer scale of the royal alchemist's resources is far beyond what they were used to, and the young woman explains that her synthesis skills are now being applied in a completely different setting. As they talk, Alice mentions her own family, specifically her father who works as a chef. She speaks with pride about how his cooking is loved by many, reflecting on the simple joys of their lives compared to the high-stakes world of royal appointments and the pressure that comes with it. The mood shifts dramatically when she hears the news that Katerina has been dismissed from her position. Alice reveals that the girl was fired for repeated unexcused absences, a revelation that leaves the young alchemist wide-eyed with shock, as she hadn't expected such a sudden downfall for her former acquaintance. She listens intently as Alice explains that the dismissal was inevitable, as Katerina's responsibilities were being neglected and causing issues for the guild. It seems the girl had become entangled in some sort of trouble involving the nobility, making her continued employment impossible despite her family standing. Finally, she recounts the chaotic events of the night before the young alchemist officially resigned. She describes a scene of great commotion where people were openly discussing a broken engagement and scandalous rumors, a situation that seems to have been the final straw in a series of unfortunate events for those involved. She continues, marveling at how quickly the rumors spread, describing the events as something straight out of a dark noble drama. Mia listens quietly, her focus momentarily on the snack she is enjoying as she processes the weight of the public's gossip. Looking at her friend, Mia calls out softly, but then decides to keep her thoughts to herself. She realizes that Alice might have been working behind the scenes to help her, and she feels a deep sense of gratitude for having such a loyal companion during these turbulent times. The conversation shifts to the expectations placed upon those who associate with nobility. While Alice mentions how others might expect them to get along, Mia inwardly recoils at the thought of the stifling etiquette and the constant need to save face, concluding that such a life is simply not for her. Alice then brings up the matter of the broken engagement, noting how harshly Gillis handled the situation. She expresses her relief that the marriage never happened, believing Mia is far better off without him, though the memory still brings a flicker of sadness to Mia's eyes. Later, having returned to the workshop, Mia is greeted by Lord Crane, who inquires about the success of her potion delivery. After she confirms everything went smoothly, he decides it is time to progress to the next stage of her training, the mastery of formation skills. He produces a pair of sturdy protective goggles, insisting that she wear them at all times during these exercises. His tone is serious, emphasizing that safety is paramount when dealing with the volatile nature of high-level alchemy. As Mia prepares herself, he explains the risks involved, warning that formation skills can be unpredictable for the inexperienced. A single mistake could lead to materials liquefying or even exploding, potentially causing serious injury to anyone nearby. To begin the lesson, he reveals a complex magic circle etched onto the workspace. He explains that this is a formation magic circle, a simplified version designed specifically for training purposes to help her get a feel for the flow of energy. Following his instructions, Mia carefully places a magic stone at the very center of the array. Crane watches closely, advising her that experiencing the process firsthand is far more effective than any lengthy explanation he could provide. As she begins to channel her mana into the stone, the circle erupts with a soft, pulsing light. Mia is suddenly overcome by a strange, jarring sensation, as if her very essence is being tugged toward the center of the formation, marking the start of a challenging new discipline. She struggles to maintain her grip as the magic ore in her hands begins to warp and liquefy, its texture shifting unpredictably. Behind her, the nobleman observes with a clinical detachment, informing her that this volatile state will persist until she masters the formation skill. Though she finds the training method daunting, she can't help but marvel at the strange, new sensation of the material yielding to her touch. As the ore continues to churn, he explains the underlying mechanics. The sections where mana fails to flow remain stubbornly hard, while the rest turns as soft as clay. He warns her that forcing the expansion creates dangerous fluctuations in energy, a lesson she learns the hard way as a sharp sting shoots through her fingers. She winces, wishing he had shared that particular detail a moment sooner. Despite the discomfort, she eventually manages to stabilize the flow, producing a simple, translucent crystal. Her mentor remains unimpressed, coolly reminding her that such a basic object is nothing more than a rudimentary tool for further work. To illustrate his point, he summons a complex geometric array around a similar crystal, explaining that while simple forms are easily achieved, high-rank materials are essential for anything of greater complexity. He emphasizes that her current level only allows for the most basic of shapes. He then presents a remarkably detailed figure of a bird, its form so intricate it seems ready to take flight. He challenges her, stating that if she ever hopes to create something of such artistry, she must first master the fundamentals. While he admits such craftsmanship isn't his primary focus, he demonstrates that even a task he considers simple results in a lifelike creation that leaves her breathless with wonder. Mia asks Crane if he has a fondness for penguins. He admits a certain curiosity, having never seen a live one, and confesses that he finds them quite charming. He looks on with a mix of surprise and hesitation as she offers him the small penguin figure she crafted. He eventually accepts the gift, though he strictly stipulates that it must never leave the confines of the workshop. She beams, feeling that having such a goal nearby will surely bolster her resolve to work harder. She reflects on his character as she gazes at the small bird, wondering if he intended the cute gesture to motivate her. While he certainly has a stern side, she is convinced that a gentle heart lies beneath his cold exterior. She stands ready at her workbench 3 days later, her eyes shielded by goggles and her expression set in a mask of intense concentration. She finds the delicate adjustments of formation magic to be incredibly taxing, struggling to even alter the basic shape of the material. Crane watches her closely, offering a word of encouragement by noting that her ability to change the shape at all is a sign of significant growth. Just before a small puff of smoke signals another failed attempt. She attempts to follow the path dictated by the intricate magic circle, yet the mana fails to penetrate the core of the object as intended. She admits that she became too focused on the formation itself, losing sight of the bigger picture. He advises her to expand her awareness, grasping the flow of mana through the entire object rather than fixating on a single point. She watches in dismay as the liquid magic scatters across the table, another failure staining her progress. She offers a sheepish apology, feeling like she will never move past the stage of a mere apprentice, while Crane reminds her that mastering these skills is essential for her future efficiency. She turns to him, curious about his own journey, and asks how long it took for him to acquire such advanced formation skills. He pauses to reflect, admitting that it took him 3 full days just to reach the point where he could successfully deploy a formation field. He observes her progress with a calm demeanor, noting that if the basics took him 3 days to master, her current struggle is only natural. Mia, adjusting her protective goggles, feels a sense of being overestimated, modestly suggesting that her ability to make potions is hardly worth such high praise. He continues his encouragement, asserting that the ability to truly enjoy alchemy is a rare talent. He admits that maintaining a pure heart and genuine enthusiasm like hers is a difficult feat, one that he finds himself slightly envious of, though she remains skeptical of his compliments. The conversation then turns toward the history of their craft, as he speaks of legendary figures who reached the absolute pinnacle of alchemy. These individuals were said to have transcended normal limits, their dedication to the art placing them on a level that is almost incomparable to modern practitioners. He confirms that even within the borders of the Remeldia kingdom, such an extraordinary person once existed. This revelation leaves her wide-eyed with wonder, her curiosity piqued as she asks just how far the boundaries of alchemy can truly be pushed. As he delves deeper into the lore, he describes a specialist who focused on magic tools, items designed to amplify and channel magical power. This legendary figure was renowned for imbuing objects with diverse and powerful effects through a mastery of both formation and enchantment. These legendary artifacts included shields capable of shrugging off any physical blow, bracelets that could reflect hostile magic, and necklaces that shielded the wearer from all manner of status ailments. The sheer utility and power of these creations represent the height of alchemical achievement. Overwhelmed by the weight of this history, she impulsively declares her ambition to one day reach such heights herself. He responds with a gentle, knowing smile, reminding her that while aiming for the top is admirable, every master must first conquer the fundamentals. He then shifts from theory to a practical demonstration, his hand hovering over a vessel of liquid magic ore. As the substance begins to swirl and rise toward his palm, she watches in awe, comparing the fluid, effortless movement to a form of fairy magic that defies the standard rules of formation. He explains that the key lies in controlling the range of one's influence and concentrating mana into an incredibly high density. With a focused gaze, he begins to deploy multiple magic fields at once, the energy manifesting as sharp, geometric patterns that hum with power. The sheer intensity of the mana causes the very air to vibrate, a sensation she feels deep in her chest as she watches being reshaped by his will. He refers to this advanced manipulation as atmospheric resonance, a technique that allows him to affect the environment directly, though he humbly notes it is a skill he is still refining. He observes as Mia contemplates the next step in her journey, realizing she must graduate from the crutch of standard magic circles. She ponders the possibility that her previous attempts weren't fundamentally flawed in their spatial interference, but rather lacked the raw output necessary to succeed. A startling thought crosses her mind. What if she has been unconsciously suppressing her own absolute power this entire time? Driven by this epiphany, she concentrates her mana to a staggering density, manifesting a multi-layered magical domain that pulses with intensity. As her hand hovers over the crystal, a magnificent and intricate magic circle flares into life beneath it, far surpassing any standard formation. Crane can only watch in stunned silence, his usual composure shaken by the sheer magnitude of the energy his student is now commanding. Mia stands before a floating, dark crystal, her eyes fixed with intense concentration behind her protective goggles. Crane watches from behind, his expression a mix of curiosity and caution as she attempts to tap into a power known as the Devil's Domain. Suddenly, the energy becomes unstable, and the crystal erupts in a violent burst of light and shards. She recoils, her hands shielding her face as the experiment fails spectacularly, the force of the reaction blowing back her hair. As the dust settles, she stares at her trembling hands, beads of sweat rolling down her face from exertion. Behind her, he murmurs the name of the forbidden technique, realizing the gravity of what she just attempted to manifest. She holds the now inert, dark stone, admitting her exhaustion and the feeling that such a feat is impossible for her. He explains that mastering the Devil's Domain requires controlling space itself, a feat naturally difficult for anyone, especially since she lacks formal skill training. He presses her to recall exactly how she managed to deploy a barrier previously, but she can only offer a flustered explanation of following his instructions instinctively. He counters sternly, insisting that such a feat is far from simple and requires more than just luck. He continues, explaining that alchemists across the globe strive for the level of control she just displayed, even in failure. She remains overwhelmed by the weight of his expectations and the sheer complexity of the craft they are discussing. Softening his tone, he reflects on the nature of alchemy, noting that setbacks are an inherent part of the process. Though the world sees him as a peerless genius, he admits that he, too, has faced a share of frustration and failure. He confesses that his path has never been as smooth as it appeared to outsiders. Despite his early appointment as a court alchemist and the accolades for curing the princess, he faced immense pressure and the sting of professional jealousy. A year prior, his reputation was cemented when he developed a revolutionary potion to save the princess from an incurable disease, a feat that dominated the news. Yet, the internal struggle behind such successes remained hidden from the public eye. Looking back at her, he asserts that age and experience are secondary to the will to persevere through failure. He surprises her by stating that it was her own efforts that helped him realize this fundamental truth, leaving her momentarily speechless. She blinked in confusion, her mind racing as she tried to recall any specific action that could have earned such profound gratitude from a master of his caliber. He met her bewildered gaze with a rare, unshielded sincerity, his usual aristocratic composure softening into something far more human. She listened intently as he began to reveal a vulnerability he had never shared before, admitting that there was a time when he had been on the verge of walking away from alchemy forever. The weight of his own genius had become a cage, and the constant pressure to innovate had nearly extinguished his passion for the craft. He looked back on a period 3 years ago when he had fallen into a paralyzing slump, a revelation that left her momentarily speechless. It was impossible for her to reconcile the image of the flawless Lord August with a man who had once felt so utterly defeated by his own limitations. He detailed how his research into complex potions had stagnated, leading to a loss of confidence so severe that even the most basic transmutations began to fail. The instability of his mental state had manifested in his work, creating a vicious cycle of failure and self-doubt that threatened to consume his career. He explained that the turning point came unexpectedly when she began submitting her work to the Adventurers Guild, unaware of who was reviewing it. Her earnest, straightforward approach to alchemy and the undeniable quality of her results had acted as a mirror, forcing him to confront his own stagnation and rediscover the joy of discovery. She leaned forward, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and dawning realization as she asked if she was truly the potion specialist whose work had made such an impact on him. The idea that her desperate attempts to support her family had reached the heights of the guild's elite was almost too much to process. She remembered with a flush of embarrassment how she had relentlessly questioned the guild's staff, never dreaming her inquiries were being passed directly to him. He chuckled softly, admitting that while her persistence had been overwhelming at first, it was exactly that unyielding spirit that had finally broken his own creative block. He watched her as she gripped a small vial, seeing in her the same fierce determination that had once served as his own salvation. The silence in the room was heavy with the weight of this shared history, a bond forged in secret long before their paths had ever officially crossed. They remained in the quiet laboratory for a long moment, the air thick with a newfound mutual respect as he credited her for his decision to persevere. The master had found his inspiration in the most unlikely of places, and the student had unknowingly saved the very man who would become her mentor. She let out a long, relieved breath, her heart swelling with the knowledge that her hard work had yielded such an incredible, unforeseen result. He, however, looked away with a slight, awkward cough, clearly hoping that this moment of profound vulnerability would remain a private secret between them. Mia expresses her deep gratitude to Crane, acknowledging that her path as an apprentice alchemist only exists because of his support. She insists that without his guidance, she never would have found her footing in the craft, but he quickly brushes off the compliment, claiming he is the one inspired by her. She listens intently as he mentions a debt from 3 years ago, a comment that sparks a sudden realization within her as she recalls the specific incident that bound their fates together. He speaks of it with a calm smile, acknowledging the weight of that shared past. Her thoughts drift to his journey, acknowledging that his current status is the result of his own unwavering dedication to the craft of alchemy. While she may have been the initial spark, she realizes it was his own resolve that carried him to his current position of authority. She watches as the nobleman scratches his head with a modest smile, admitting he hadn't intended to sound quite so dramatic. She finds the sentiment touching regardless, noting how his reputation has soared all the way to S rank, a feat that leaves her in awe of his progress. With renewed vigor, she adjusts her goggles and vows to embrace even the most difficult and unglamorous aspects of her training. He watches her with a quiet smile, advising her to focus on her own burgeoning talent and the steps immediately ahead of her rather than dwelling on past failures. She is caught off guard when he suggests that she head to the Alchemist Guild to finalize her registration after finishing her work for the day. The suddenness of the task leaves her blinking in surprise, her mind racing to process the unexpected errand. Her expression clouds with worry as she admits her reluctance to go, fearing a chance encounter with her former fiancé, Gillis. The memory of his arrogant smirk and the cold way he treated her makes the prospect of visiting the guild feel like walking into a trap. She finds comfort in his knowing look as he reassures her that the man in question is likely far too preoccupied with the complexities of alchemy and unexpected visitors to bother her. He hints that Gillis is currently overwhelmed, struggling to maintain his composure amidst mounting pressure. Later, as she walks through the city streets, she finds herself dwelling on a friend's cryptic warnings about impending trouble. A sense of unease settles over her, a feeling that something significant and perhaps dangerous is unfolding just beyond her sight. Arriving at the guild, she is met with a scene of utter chaos as the entrance is swarmed by agitated alchemists. Their voices rise in a cacophony of confusion and alarm, confirming her fears that something has gone terribly wrong within the heart of the organization. She is greeted warmly by a familiar face amidst the chaos. Vanessa Wesley, the submaster of the Alchemist Guild and a former A-rank alchemist herself, welcomes Mia with a bright smile, seemingly unfazed by the surrounding noise. Vanessa immediately begins to vent about the current state of the guild, explaining that they are desperately shorthanded at the reception desk. She mentions that even a cat's help would be welcome at this point, highlighting the sheer volume of work they are facing. She brings up the news of Mia leaving the Adventurers Guild. It seems she has been keeping an eye on Mia's career, noting the significant change in her professional path with a mix of curiosity and support. The submaster listens as Mia clarifies her intentions, stating that she has come to re-register as an alchemist. She presents a small bottle containing a potion she crafted, knowing that for a B-rank registration or higher, a demonstration of skill is mandatory. She takes the bottle, her expression turning serious as she inspects the liquid within. The quality of the potion is immediately apparent, confirming the rumors she had heard about Mia's burgeoning talent. The submaster notes that the whispers about Mia have changed. The old stories of a broken engagement are being overwritten by her new reputation as a skilled alchemist. She mentions that even the court alchemists are starting to take notice. She beams with pure joy as she expresses how wonderful it is to see Mia pursuing alchemy. Vanessa admits she was genuinely surprised, but is thrilled that Mia has chosen this path, her laughter ringing out over the din of the guild hall. The submaster invites Mia to follow her, deciding to bypass the bureaucratic nightmare at the front desk. She offers to handle the registration personally, a gesture of favoritism that promises a much smoother process. Meanwhile, Alice is being besieged by a crowd of disgruntled alchemists. They're shouting about contract changes and demanding explanations, leaving the poor receptionist completely overwhelmed by their aggressive complaints. The submaster remains blissfully indifferent to the mounting tension at the counter. She breezily tells Alice to handle the disgruntled crowd herself, focusing entirely on leading Mia toward the inner offices to finalize her new status. She breezily dismisses the surrounding tension, telling Mia not to worry because everyone already knows she rarely listens to anyone else's opinion. While Mia internally questions the guild's chaotic working conditions, the submaster suddenly declares she has locked on to her new favorite and begins dragging the startled girl away by the arm. Watching the scene unfold from a distance, Alice can only sigh in exhaustion, seriously contemplating whether it's finally time to resign from such a stressful workplace. Vanessa greets Mia warmly at the guild counter, expressing her surprise and delight that Mia has finally decided to register with the Alchemist Guild. Alice stands nearby, observing the exchange as the submaster comments on how much things have changed since Mia became an assistant. She continues, revealing a long-held suspicion that the potions Mia had been submitting all along actually contained her own mana. Mia listens, her expression a mix of surprise and realization as the weight of this observation sinks in. The implications of such a discovery are grave, as the Alchemist Guild maintains strict regulations against unregistered individuals producing goods. If it were revealed that an assistant performed the vast majority of the work, the consequences would be severe. Leaning in with a knowing smile, the submaster gently brushes a strand of hair from Mia's face, remarking on how clearly she can sense the girl's magical signature now. Alice watches the intimate gesture with a startle, while Mia remains frozen under the intense scrutiny. Realizing the potential for a scandal, she decides to keep the specifics of her findings quiet, knowing that a formal investigation into such a discrepancy would only lead to unnecessary trouble for everyone involved. She then shifts the conversation, questioning why Mia chose this particular moment to register, especially given her busy schedule assisting the prominent Lord August. In response, the young woman explains her desire to stand on her own merits, though she is quickly cautioned to be careful with her words, as the guild operates on strict hierarchies and political nuances. Placing a steadying hand on Mia's forehead, the elder woman notes that she can feel the resonance of a specialized formation skill, one that suggests rigorous and high-level training. With a triumphant flourish, she produces a small, glittering shard, a fragment of a magic stone that had been salvaged from a previous failed experiment, proving her point about Mia's active involvement. Finally, she outlines the path ahead, explaining that for the guild to truly acknowledge her as a professional, she must strive to reach at least B rank, offering a mix of stern reality and genuine encouragement for the journey Mia has just begun. She listens with a healthy dose of skepticism as Vanessa beams with excitement, claiming to have found a perfect solution to the guild's supply issues that will benefit everyone involved. She explains that if Mia can consistently deliver a specific quota of potions, it will resolve the legal hurdles of her unregistered status without interfering with her duties as an assistant. She then reveals the catch by presenting a formal document. A C-rank request for 100 potions to be completed by the end of the week, a task that leaves Mia momentarily stunned. She clasps her hands together in a desperate plea, arguing that having a capable assistant handle such a task would be a massive help to the guild and would surely please Lord Crane. She pulls the young alchemist into a sudden, joyful embrace, delighted by the prospect of cooperation, while the girl's mind begins to wander. She recalls a memory of Gillis, who is seen bowing low and desperately begging for an extension on a potion delivery deadline he failed to meet. He tries to bargain, promising that if given more time, he can produce something far superior to the current stock, but Mia remains unmoved by his excuses and refuses to budge on the deadline. He eventually snaps, his face contorted with rage as he shouts about his status as a genius alchemist who is destined to reach Brewing at an unprecedented age, feeling insulted by her lack of respect. Ignoring his outburst, the young alchemist looks down at him with a mixture of pity and cold indifference, seeing only a man blinded by his own ego. She finally shatters his pride, declaring that geniuses do not exist. There are only those who have accumulated enough effort to be called such by people who cannot see the work behind the result. She watches the exchange with a quiet intensity as Vanessa laughs heartily, her hand resting against her cheek while she dismisses the fuming young man beside her. Gillis can barely contain his rage, inwardly cursing the woman he believes abandoned the true path of alchemy. The submaster continues her playful taunting, suggesting that the little boy should only speak once he's actually managed to brew a potion of any real quality. As he storms off into the distance, the submaster calls out a final reminder that her words only carry weight if he can actually produce results. Returning to her duties, she lets out a weary sigh and leans against a desk, lamenting the burdens of her position. To her, managing such difficult personalities during her busiest hours is the most exhausting part of her role. At the guild, Vanessa shares a rumor with Mia about a potentially interesting visitor who might be arriving soon. Mia listens intently, her expression a mix of curiosity and professional focus as she considers the implications of this news. Gillis walks through the halls of the academy, seemingly indifferent to the biting gossip trailing in his wake. The onlookers whisper about how his former fiancé was scouted by a royal alchemist, while he was left behind, struggling to maintain his standing and failing to manage his affairs. He continues his solitary march, jaw set tight against the insults regarding his character and failing business. The weight of his social decline is palpable in his rigid, defensive posture. Elsewhere, the consequences of his failures take a more formal shape as General Hopebrill and his knights discuss a serious breach of contract. The deadline for a potion delivery has long since passed without a word of explanation, leaving the military leadership frustrated and demanding answers. Gillis stands amidst the silence of his own shop, staring at the rows of empty shelves that should be filled with product. The reality of his situation is stark. Without materials, he cannot fulfill the very contracts that keep his reputation afloat. He finally snaps, hurling equipment across the room in a violent outburst of frustration. He rages against the low-level knights who dare to pressure him, stubbornly clinging to the belief that his genius is simply being misunderstood or sabotaged. He eventually slumps into a sullen silence, beginning the tedious task of cleaning up the wreckage of his tantrum. The anger has faded into a cold, desperate realization of his predicament. The door suddenly swings open, and his young assistant rushes in, breathless but triumphant as she presents a large bundle of fresh herbs. His eyes widen with a spark of hope, recognizing the rare ingredients as the new medicinal herbs he so desperately needs. She offers the bundle to him, explaining that these are the very last supplies she could find in the entire area. He looks at the herbs with a mixture of relief and his usual arrogance, as if this stroke of luck was his due. She recounts the grueling journey she took to secure them, detailing how she had to scour multiple shops across the capital because stock has completely dried up. She mentions the hostility she faced, having been turned away from several establishments, emphasizing just how precarious their situation has become. She breaks down in tears, her voice trembling as she asks why she's the one being blamed for their predicament. Her master looms over her, his expression harsh as he redirects the fault onto her and her companions, claiming their incompetence is the true source of their trouble. Because of the dire shortage, he paces irritably, dismissing the small amount of herbs she managed to find as insufficient for their needs. He recounts the numerous times he attempted to secure more stock, only to be met with failure at every turn, while she can do nothing but sob quietly at his side. Moments later, she wipes her eyes, reminding him of the looming deadline for the Royal Knight's delivery that they cannot afford to miss. He stares into the distance, his jaw set as he realizes there is no turning back now. Desperate for reassurance, she gazes up at him, pleading to know if he truly has the skill to fulfill the order under these conditions. In response, he grips her shoulders firmly, a sharp, arrogant smile cutting across his face. He scoffs at her doubt, declaring with absolute certainty that he is a genius alchemist and that such a task is well within his capabilities, regardless of the obstacles. This display of confidence seems to work, as she looks up with wide, trusting eyes, whispering her agreement that he is indeed a genius. Outside, the quiet of the evening settles over the building where they have staked their reputation on this final batch of potions. Meanwhile, in a much calmer workshop, the young alchemist Mia is already hard at work when Vanessa and Lord Crane arrive. Vanessa questions the early start, and Mia explains that she is fulfilling a specific request, having spent the morning gathering the necessary ingredients from the local shopkeeper to ensure the quality of her work. As she continues her preparations, the nobleman points out that she has left her formation scroll spread across the table, which could interfere with the delicate balance of magic. She jumps slightly, her hand flying to her face in a moment of clumsy realization as she feels the pressure of their observation. Suddenly, a soft light emanates from the magic circle beneath a small glass vial. The air hums with a faint magical resonance as the concoction begins to react to the array, signaling a successful and potent synthesis. With a gasp of surprise, she lifts the bottle, which is now filled with a shimmering, effervescent liquid that glows with an unnatural brilliance. Both Vanessa and Crane stare in stunned silence at the quality of the result, the nobleman finally demanding to know exactly what kind of extraordinary potion she has just created. Crane questions Mia about the object in her hand, his curiosity piqued by the unusual glow. She looks up, startled by his sudden interest in her work. Before them sits a vial filled with a luminous, pale blue liquid, a potion Mia has just finished crafting. She holds the vial up to the light, mesmerized by its clarity and the way it sparkles. It is a much deeper, more vibrant blue than the recovery potions she usually brews. Crane asks if this is her own creation, and she admits that while she intended to make a standard potion, this result was entirely unexpected. He leans in closer, noting that the concoction bears a striking resemblance to a middle potion. She nods in agreement, having noticed the similarity herself but unsure how she achieved it. The nobleman points out the anomaly. Middle potions typically require far more complex ingredients and refined techniques than what she used. He holds up a simple herb, remarking that such a basic component should not be capable of producing a potion of this caliber. Examining the plant, he theorizes that her formation skill might have fundamentally altered the properties of the herb during the process, enhancing its natural recovery effects beyond their normal limits. They compare the new brew to standard samples. He observes that the mana density and overall quality are exceptionally high, far surpassing any ordinary potion, even if it doesn't perfectly match a traditional middle potion. She remains humble, or perhaps simply confused, explaining that she merely performed the brewing atop a magic circle. He chides her gently, telling her that, as the creator, she shouldn't downplay such a significant achievement. He grows contemplative, wondering if such a feat can be replicated consistently. She meets his gaze with a newfound spark of curiosity and resolve, the weight of the discovery beginning to sink in. He presses her for details, asking if any other special steps were taken during the synthesis. She insists there were none. She simply used the pre-processed materials she had on hand and followed her usual routine within the magic circle's influence. Driven by a need for answers, she returns to her station. She is determined to deconstruct the process and understand the exact nature of the phenomenon that allowed her to create such a powerful elixir from such humble beginnings. She gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her brow as she struggled to maintain the delicate flow of mana. The formation circle pulsed with an erratic light, threatening to destabilize the entire process as the magical energy resisted her control. Seeing her struggle, he stepped closer, his voice a calm anchor amidst the magical turbulence. He assured her that her mana control was already superior to his own and offered to handle the final, most taxing stage of the synthesis to ensure the potion's stability. With a swift, practiced motion, he stabilized the reaction, and a moment later, the glow subsided to reveal a perfectly formed vial. She could only stare in disbelief at the speed and precision of his work, marveling at how effortlessly he completed the task. They stood before 3 identical vials, each containing a potion of remarkable clarity and potency. She remarked that producing even one such item was far beyond the expected skill level of an apprentice. Yet they had managed to create 3 in quick succession, a feat that left her both impressed and slightly overwhelmed. As they analyzed the results, he pondered whether this phenomenon was tied to the specific herbs or if her unique formation skill could be applied to any material. She suggested that the skill might be enhancing the very essence of the ingredients, creating something far more valuable than the sum of its parts, though the exact mechanics remained a mystery. He expressed a desire to conduct further tests to identify any potential flaws, his eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. However, she quickly reminded him that their current stock of materials was limited and intended for a specific request from Vanessa, urging him to be mindful of their resources. Acknowledging her point, he decided on a whim to head out and procure more supplies himself. She tried to protest, insisting that running errands was the duty of an assistant and that he should remain focused on his research, but he was already turning toward the door with a determined stride. As he made his way down the bustling street, he remained unaware of the watchful eyes following his progress. From a window high above, a man in a white coat observed the scene with a calculating gaze, his presence a silent shadow over their recent success. Mia enters the familiar shop, her expression urgent as she asks for more medicinal herbs. The shopkeeper looks up in surprise, noting that the young woman had already made a purchase earlier that morning. She recalls the conversation with Vanessa, who was stunned by the sheer volume of Mia's new contract. It was unheard of for a newcomer to be tasked with 200 items on their very first day, a feat usually reserved for seasoned professionals. She scans the shelves, only to find them unexpectedly bare. The lack of stock is a serious blow to her plans, and she quickly asks where all the supplies have gone. The shopkeeper explains that a single buyer came in and cleared out the entire inventory. She expresses her own frustration, as the sudden shortage has left her unable to provide for her regular clientele. She's presented with a small bag of fine powder, as Mia attempts to negotiate for any hidden stock. Despite the generous offer, the older woman insists that her shelves are truly empty. She lets out a raspy laugh at the girl's persistence, acknowledging her cleverness but reiterating the grim reality. There is simply nothing left to sell, no matter how much Mia might plead. She goes on to speculate that some incompetent alchemist is likely panic-buying everything in sight. The situation is dire across the kingdom, with even the major gardens struggling to meet demand and imposing strict purchase limits. Mia realizes that her only remaining option is to visit the Adventurers Guild to procure the necessary materials. She worries about the timing, knowing that her friend Alice has recently retired and might not be there to help. The shopkeeper pulls out a few meager, wilted stems, offering them as a last resort. Mia immediately identifies them as low-quality, shoddy goods that are unfit for her high-standard work. The young woman steps back out into the street, her mind racing with the need to find a new supplier. Behind her, the shopkeeper warns her not to try any more tricks, though she seems content to keep the information Mia provided. She pauses in front of a familiar storefront, the sign Belladonna, stirring memories of her time at the guild. It had been a frequent stop for gifts back then, and the nostalgic scent wafting from within is impossible to ignore. Stepping inside, she is greeted by the shopkeeper's warm smile. The woman welcomes her back, noting that it's been a while since her last visit, while she politely announces her arrival. The shopkeeper remarks on the perfect timing, explaining that a fresh batch of almond cookies has just come out of the oven. The aroma is indeed more enticing than usual, catching her off guard and making her mouth water. A tray of golden brown treats sits ready, each one topped with a whole, toasted almond that glistens under the shop's warm lights. Taking a bite, she is immediately struck by the perfect harmony of the crunchy almond and the rich, buttery dough. The shopkeeper beams at the praise, mentioning how much effort went into the recipe and suggesting she take some home. It occurs to her that in the past, she only ever bought these as offerings for others, never for herself. A brief internal struggle ensues as she considers her diet and the formal dress she must fit into, but the temptation proves too great. She decides that a small reward for her hard work is justified and asks for a full assortment of the new cookies along with her usual favorites. Emerging back into the sunlight, she carries the decorative paper bag with a sense of quiet triumph. The thought of the treats waiting for her brings a bright smile to her face, turning a simple errand into a moment of genuine joy. Mia approaches the Adventurers Guild, a large, multi-story building that stands as a hub of activity. She reflects on how long it's been since her last visit, noting that she was unable to come while Katerina was around. Her thoughts drift to Alice, wondering if the girl is managing the noble-related protocols correctly. Inside, she finds Alice already deep in conversation with a guild staff member. The man appears surprised by the specific terms of the request, but Alice remains steadfast, accepting the escort mission without hesitation. Mia watches the exchange from a short distance, slightly puzzled by the intensity of the situation. With a sharp salute and a look of absolute determination, the young woman declares her readiness to serve. Her enthusiasm is so great that it seems to radiate from her, punctuated by small stars of excitement. She is fully committed to the task at hand, leaving no room for doubt. The staff member remains skeptical, questioning if she is truly capable of handling such a responsibility. He looks at her with a mix of concern and disbelief, but she quickly reassures him with a loud, energetic confirmation. Mia, watching from the side, can't help but feel that her friend might be overdoing it just a little. Softening his expression, he looks at her with a hint of nostalgia. He remarks that seeing her spirited attitude reminds him of the days when he used to teach noble etiquette to his own young daughter, finding a strange sense of familiarity in her behavior. He wonders aloud if she might actually have the face of a noble, a comment that catches her completely off guard. She stammers in response, unsure of how to react to such a suggestion. Mia listens to the conversation, her curiosity piqued by the man's observation. After finalizing the arrangements, the man officially entrusts the mission to them, hoping that everything will proceed smoothly. She responds with one last energetic salute, her resolve unshaken as they prepare to head out and fulfill their duties. Later, the adrenaline fades, leaving her completely drained and slumped over a table in exhaustion. The intensity of the day has clearly taken its toll. Mia approaches her with a kind, sympathetic smile, offering words of praise for her hard work and dedication. To lift her spirits, she presents a box of high-quality cookies from the Belladonna shop. The sight of the treats immediately revitalizes the tired girl, whose eyes light up with pure joy. She expresses her heartfelt gratitude, touched by the thoughtful gesture. As they share the treats, the conversation turns to the differences between social classes. She questions if it is a noble rule to check the contents of a gift immediately, noting how it differs from commoner customs. They enjoy the light-hearted moment together, the stress of the mission momentarily forgotten. She stands beside her friend amidst the bustling energy of the guild, where the other members are reminiscing about Mia's past contributions. They laugh, noting that her reputation preceded her and that having her around always made things more interesting for everyone involved. As they walk away from the crowd, she asks how the interaction with the nobility went. The young woman admits with a sigh that it didn't go particularly well, though she's glad to be back in the familiar atmosphere of the guild, even if only for a moment. Moving into the quieter archives, the conversation shifts to the trouble caused by Katarina's recent absence. Despite the pressure, Mia remains firm, stating clearly that she has no intention of leaving her current position, finding a sense of belonging she hadn't expected. While browsing the shelves, they discuss the current shortage of medicinal herbs. It seems that despite the high demand, the guild stock is surprisingly low, a problem that has been bothering the staff lately as they struggle to fulfill requests. She examines a bundle of herbs as her friend explains the difficulty of the task. Many novice adventurers take on these gathering missions without proper knowledge, often damaging the plants and resulting in a surplus of low-quality materials that are nearly useless for high-level work. Looking at the crate of discarded herbs, she realizes that even these failures could serve a purpose. She considers that while they might not be fit for professional sale, they would be perfect for practicing her alchemy skills without wasting expensive resources. Her friend pauses, watching her with a soft, contemplative expression. She remarks on how much Mia has changed since they first met, noting a new light in her eyes and a confidence that wasn't there before. With a warm smile, the other woman observes that she finally looks like she is truly enjoying herself. It is a simple observation, but one that carries a lot of weight given their shared history and the struggles they've witnessed. This comment sparks a moment of deep reflection as she looks back on her years spent working at the guild. She realizes with a start that during all that time, the concept of having fun had been entirely foreign to her. She had simply been surviving. The weight of past expectations and the rigid duty to the Boitez family loom in the darkness of her thoughts. These reminders of noble obligation serve as a stark contrast to the freedom and joy she is beginning to find in her new life. She walks a solitary path, her mind heavy with the weight of duty and the constant pressure to do what was expected of her. For so long, this was the only direction she knew, a straight line dictated by her lineage and the expectations of others. She recalls memories of her former life flickering like shadows, the cold expectation of perfection and the impossibility of breaking an engagement. Yet, she remembers that pivotal day when she finally took a leap into the unknown, leaving the rigid certainty of her past behind to find her own way. She feels this new journey has reopened a door she thought was closed forever. The path of an alchemist, surrounded by the glow of crystals and the promise of discovery. Though she is uncertain of where it leads, or if it is truly the correct choice, she is no longer walking it as a mere extension of a noble house, but as an individual forging her own destiny. Returning to the present, she shares a warm smile with her companion, admitting that she has never been happier. She explains that, despite everything, she finds the study of alchemy truly enjoyable. Her friend is heartened by this confession, noting that her happiness is what matters most. As they prepare to leave the archives, they agree to catch up again soon, their conversation trailing off as they step out into the day. Lord Bruce stands firm, his decision made. He informs Gillis that the annual contract is being terminated immediately, much to the younger man's disbelief. He remains unmoved as Gillis protests vehemently, arguing that there have been no issues with the potions provided in the past. The nobleman notes the somber atmosphere as he steps back to observe the premises, seeing no sign of the prosperity it once held. He surveys the barren shelves and the absence of patrons, noting that even the staff seem to have lost their spark. His thoughts drift to the young woman who used to manage the floor, remembering her diligent care for the customers. He recalls how she would handle even the most menial tasks with grace, while Gillis dismissed such work as beneath him. The Lord sets his tea down with finality, explaining that he cannot trust a shop that has lost the very person who held its reputation together. The young man reacts with a fit of arrogant desperation, claiming he will now reveal his true potential and create potions of unprecedented quality. He is met with a look of pity and disdain from the nobleman, who asks if he truly understands the nature of noble associations. The youth is stunned as the truth is finally revealed. The Bruce family's patronage was tied solely to Mia and her connection to the Hope Brill house, a bond his own selfishness has now severed. He lashes out, his voice echoing through the room as he accuses Mia of weaving a web of lies to ruin him. He points a trembling finger, insisting that every failure is her fault, while she stands frozen by the sudden venom in his words. This reputation she had built stood in stark contrast to his accusations. Throughout the city, those who dealt with the daughter of the Hope Brill family never had a disparaging word to say, noting how she always ensured every contract was fulfilled without a hitch. She was often seen preparing medicinal herbs long before the sun reached its peak or heading out to secure rare supplies, her dedication undeniable even as he watched from the shadows, a quiet envy beginning to take root in his heart. He found that at social gatherings, the praise for his success was frequently punctuated by comments on his good fortune in having such a capable partner, words that fed his ego while simultaneously deepening the secret resentment he felt toward her growing influence. Returning to the harsh reality of the present, she reaches out with a gentle hand, pleading for him to stop the accusations and admitting that she had long sensed the growing friction, fearing that her own presence was the cause of his recent struggles. He pulls away, his mind racing with the conviction that he is a genius alchemist who cannot simply admit to being surpassed or aided by someone he considers beneath his professional standing. The weight of his pride becomes a suffocating shroud as he dwells on his current slump, cursing the world for treating a C-rank alchemist with such perceived disrespect just because his recent work has faltered. Sensing the irreparable rift, she quietly gathers herself and offers a final, somber farewell, her eyes downcast as she prepares to step away from the life they had built together. As she departs, she reflects on the warmth she received from others and wonders if her own admiration for his talent had inadvertently turned into a burden that neither of them could carry any longer. The silence left in her wake is heavy, punctuated only by the realization that some bridges, once burned by pride and misunderstanding, are nearly impossible to rebuild. Even as he remains locked in his own bitterness, his assistant looks downcast, her eyes reflecting a mix of regret and a burgeoning resolve. She contemplates her next move, feeling the weight of the trouble she has caused. There is one place, she muses, that might offer her a chance to start over, though she remains uncertain if she will be accepted. She watches as he, however, is consumed by a blind, narcissistic fury, his face contorted as he screams at the empty air. He bellows that he is absolutely not in the wrong and that everyone, including those who turn their backs on him, will live to regret insulting a genius alchemist of his caliber. He is left behind as she, having reached her limit, quietly acknowledges that things have become impossible, her voice a mere whisper as she prepares to depart. She notes the dwindling supply of medicinal herbs, a final professional observation before her footsteps echo down the hallway and out of the building. Outside, the peace of the town is suddenly shattered by a frantic cry of alarm. She is long gone by the time a messenger bursts through the doors, his face pale with urgency as he delivers dire news from the Knights. A massive surge of monsters has been reported in the eastern forest, a revelation that strikes a chord of dread in those listening. The situation is made even more critical by the fact that students from the Magic Academy are currently in that very forest for their field exercises. Mia is deeply immersed in her alchemical work, her hands glowing with a soft light as she carefully manipulates the raw materials. She struggles with the intricate details, her brow furrowed in concentration as she tries to stabilize the reaction. She is joined by Gillis, who examines the resulting potion with a critical eye. While he acknowledges the high quality of the brew, he points out the slight inconsistencies in the final product, which she admits are difficult to eliminate entirely. She explains that the primary advantage of this new method is its ability to produce stable, high-quality potions even from subpar ingredients. However, she notes that the process is far from perfect and requires immense focus. The young woman listens intently as he points out the extreme difficulty of the mana control required for such a feat. He notes that even an experienced alchemist would find the task daunting, emphasizing the high level of skill she is demonstrating. She reviews her detailed notes and formulas, realizing that the burden on the practitioner increases significantly when the quality of the herbs is low. The complexity of the task seems to weigh on her as she considers the limitations of her current approach. Her thoughts drift to the sheer amount of mana consumed by the formation skill, a technique she has yet to fully master. She calculates that she can only produce about 20 potions a day, a limit that feels restrictive given the demand. He reassures her, offering a rare moment of encouragement by stating that alchemical research is a slow process that often takes years. He insists that her current achievements are already far beyond what anyone expected of her. She remains anxious despite his supportive words, looking down at the simple wooden crate of herbs and the lone potion bottle. The desire to produce perfect results consistently, without relying on luck or external help, continues to drive her. He continues to offer his perspective, suggesting that while she has made incredible strides, she is still relatively inexperienced in the broader field of alchemy. He warns her that there are many complexities she has yet to encounter. He is interrupted as the door swings open and Vanessa enters the room with her usual energetic flair. The submaster's sudden appearance catches them both off guard, shifting the focus of the conversation entirely. She apologized for the sudden intrusion, her expression serious as she addressed both of them, stating that she had urgent business that required their immediate attention. Leading them to a more comfortable seating area, she prepared to deliver news that would clearly disrupt their research. She revealed that the capital was experiencing a sudden and severe shortage of potions, a crisis exacerbated by a lack of medicinal herbs that they were both likely aware of. Explaining the complexities of guild regulations, she noted that the Alchemist Guild was often hamstrung by the need for state permission to sell, causing their response to lag behind the growing demand. She reflected on past protocols where potion distribution was tightly controlled, reserved primarily for high-ranking adventurers during critical subjugation missions to maintain order and safety. With a heavy sigh, she admitted that the very crisis they feared had finally manifested, catching the guild off guard. The gravity of the situation became clear as she announced a massive outbreak of monsters within the eastern forest, a development that stunned her listeners. This news visibly unsettled the young man, especially since a group of students from the Magic Academy was currently in that very forest for a field exercise, and early reports suggested the situation was dire. The weight of the potential tragedy pressed down on the young woman, who knew that many of those students came from influential noble families, making the rescue efforts a matter of extreme political and social urgency. With the Night Order fully engaged in both combat and rescue operations, she made a formal plea for them to produce as many potions as possible to aid the survivors and the wounded soldiers. She explains the dire situation, confirming that despite the alchemist's monopoly on herbs and his contract with the Night Order, not a single potion has been delivered. The nobleman listens, his expression grave as the gravity of the supply shortage becomes clear. Her eyes sharpen with urgency as she describes the unfolding crisis. The Night Order is desperate, and with her own brother among their ranks, the lack of supplies is personal. In the monster-infested forest, the shortage of life-saving elixirs has left the front lines dangerously exposed. This revelation weighs heavily on the young alchemist, who recalls that Gillis also holds a significant contract with the Order. She can't help but wonder if he, too, is failing to meet his obligations during such a critical time. Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open as a frantic messenger arrives, calling out for the submaster. While the young woman moves quickly to intercept the newcomer, the nobleman watches her with a silent, calculating gaze. The messenger hesitates, but she gives him leave to speak openly, noting that the news affects them all. He reports that several students from the Magic Academy have been successfully located and brought under protection, providing a small glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. However, the relief is short-lived as he continues his grim report. A brutal monster ambush at dawn resulted in the total destruction of their potion stockpile. With the guarding knights now gravely wounded and their medical supplies gone, the situation has spiraled into a true catastrophe. The submaster reports the dire situation to Crane, explaining that the Alchemist Guild is scrambling to gather supplies, but the current stock is far from sufficient to meet the growing demand. She observes the available herbs with a critical eye, noting that while they have some materials, the mediocre quality makes it nearly impossible to produce the high-level potions required for the front lines. Crane steps up to offer his assistance, inquiring about the specific quantities and preparations needed for the upcoming transport to ensure the soldiers are properly equipped. Vanessa is stunned by the quality of the sample she examines, immediately recognizing the superior craftsmanship as Mia's work and realizing it far exceeds anything the guild currently possesses. She places a massive order for 4 sets of 20 potions, emphasizing to Mia and Crane that these high-grade medicines are their last hope for stabilizing the situation, despite the daunting scale of the request. Crane feels the immense weight of the task, calculating that producing 80 high-level potions consecutively will be an exhausting ordeal, yet he knows they have no choice but to proceed. He coordinates the effort with professional focus, instructing Mia to prioritize the meticulous preparation of the herbs while he prepares to handle the complex compounding process. He warns her against rushing the work, reminding her that in high-level alchemy, a single mistake born of haste can lead to a total loss of time and precious materials. The work begins in the quiet intensity of the workshop, where he carefully measures and pours the base liquids, his movements steady and practiced as the first batch takes shape. The young alchemist completes the initial processing and transitions to the compounding phase, concentrating her mana with absolute focus to stabilize the volatile mixture within the flask. She focuses intently on the task at hand, knowing that with the right herbs, high-quality potions can be crafted easily. Her mind drifts to the students and the knights who depend on these supplies, fueling her determination to succeed. Concentrating all her energy, she channels mana into the flask. She tells herself to focus solely on the creation of the potions, pushing all other thoughts aside to maintain the delicate balance required for such a large batch. Crane watches her closely, warning her not to overexert herself. He notes that maintaining multiple simultaneous reactions is taxing even for him, and it's certainly not a task an apprentice should be handling alone. Mia acknowledges his concern, realizing that in times like these, she's being treated as more than just a student. He reflects on the danger of spreading the specific alchemical method too widely, as it could be misused if it fell into the wrong hands. Despite the risks, he knows they have no choice but to rely on their own skills to meet the demand. He glances back at her, urging her not to take on too much of the burden herself. He assures her that even if they fall short of the required number of potions, it won't be her fault. He wants her to understand that the pressure of the situation shouldn't rest entirely on her shoulders, especially given the complexity of the task. Despite his words, the pressure begins to take its toll as her mana starts to fluctuate. She realizes with a start that even after combining her work with his, they're still far from reaching the target amount needed for the front lines. A vision of her father and brother, wounded on the battlefield, flashes through her mind. The thought of them being sent to the front lines without proper support fills her with a desperate resolve. She must succeed, no matter the cost to her own health. She decides to push her limits, attempting to expand her mana field to cover more ground. Crane calls out to her in alarm, reminding her that he told her not to overdo it, but she is already deep in the process, trying to compensate for her lack of skill with sheer willpower. Her vision blurs as the scent of herbs and the hum of mana overwhelm her senses. With a final, forceful command, she orders the energy to obey her will, pouring every ounce of her strength into the magic circle beneath the flask. Suddenly, the chaotic energy stabilizes into a brilliant, steady glow. She stares at the flask in disbelief, a soft gasp escaping her lips as she realizes she might have actually succeeded in the impossible task. She stands frozen, her breath hitching as a familiar sensation washes over her, a feeling of power and precision she has experienced once before. Beside her, Crane watches with growing disbelief, his voice barely a whisper as he questions if she has truly achieved the impossible through sheer instinct. As the glowing potion settles within its flask, Crane's attention is diverted by a sudden, cackling laugh echoing through the room. An elderly woman with a sharp, knowing gaze and a mischievous grin steps forward, her presence commanding and eerie. She remarks on the fascinating turn of events, noting that the demon's domain has been breached once again, casting a new shadow of mystery over Mia's achievement. Mia and Crane are startled by the sudden appearance of the elderly woman behind the counter. She dismisses their shock with a wave of her hand, claiming she merely stopped by to share some sweets with them. It is a disarming entrance for someone of her stature. She begins her alchemical work under the elder's watchful eye, but the atmosphere quickly turns serious. The woman warns that maintaining such an unstable domain expansion is a reckless gamble that could drain her consciousness in an instant. Her teeth grit as she struggles to maintain the complex formation, but the elder's critique is sharp and unrelenting. She is told that her current magical output is far too meager to support the multi-layered structure she is trying to manifest. Despite her exhaustion, the transmutation circle erupts in a brilliant glow, signaling a successful stabilization that earns a rare, begrudging word of praise from the elder. Their conversation then shifts to the mysterious demon's domain they encountered previously. She questions whether that overwhelming presence was actually a high-level application of formation skills, seeking to understand the power they faced. He recounts their harrowing experience on the battlefield, explaining how they were forced to melt down weapons and armor just to survive. The elder listens with a knowing smirk, finally identifying the art as divine alchemy. She clarifies that what they perceived as a demonic realm was actually a sophisticated alchemical field. She further reveals the existence of EX potions, a revelation that leaves both of them stunned by the sheer scale of the craft. She watches as the young woman's physical limits are finally reached, causing her to stumble from the mental strain as Crane catches her with a voice full of concern. Before she can push herself into a total collapse, the elder firmly seizes her arm to stop the process. She is warned that another attempt at a domain expansion would knock her out in seconds, and is offered a more efficient path forward. She receives a stern lecture from the elder, who explains that divine alchemy pushes materials to their absolute limits at a heavy cost to the user's vitality. To succeed, she must abandon the grand scale of the domain and focus entirely on the intrinsic properties of the potion itself. This shift in perspective is her next hurdle. She stands beside Crane as he addresses the elderly woman, his voice steady as he proposes a joint effort. He explains that by deploying his own domain alongside hers, the immense strain on her body would be significantly lessened. However, the elder is unimpressed, her face contorted in a sharp, mocking shout as she reminds them that she taught them to accept the kindness of others with grace. The old woman dismisses his offer with a wave of her hand, holding up 3 fingers and demanding they bring her 3 full boxes of high-quality herbal sweets instead. She insists that such a small gesture won't make up for their lack of manners, leaving the two of them to exchange a weary glance in the background of her cluttered workshop. Despite the elder's prickly demeanor, they begin the delicate process of synthesis, with Crane taking the lead to establish the initial domain. He carefully pours a shimmering liquid into a flask, his movements precise and practiced, while she watches closely, ready to synchronize her energy with his. Together, they activate the complex divine alchemy, a multi-layered domain expansion that manifests as a brilliant, rotating geometric seal between them. The air hums with raw power as they push the materials to their absolute limits, their combined focus creating a resonance that illuminates the entire room. As the process nears its conclusion, she feels her mana reserves dwindling to a dangerous low, her vision beginning to blur from the exertion. She grits her teeth, determined to maintain the formation for just a few seconds more, knowing that any lapse in concentration now would result in a catastrophic failure. A steady hand finally places the completed vials onto the wooden shelf, the glass clinking softly as the intense magical pressure dissipates. Watching from the shadows, the elderly woman sighs, muttering about how their recklessness reminds her far too much of her own youth. The toll of the ritual becomes immediately apparent as she slumps forward, her breath coming in ragged gasps while she leans against the workbench for support. Crane watches her with concern, while the elder continues her lecture, pointing out that losing consciousness after a task is a sign of poor mana management. The old woman stands tall, her finger raised as she delivers a final, stern reminder that they're the future of alchemy and must treat their craft and their own lives with more respect. Having heard enough, Crane turns and exits the room, the heavy door clicking shut behind him as he leaves the workshop's stifling atmosphere. He pauses in the hallway, his thoughts drifting back to the young woman who is now being hailed as a potential successor to the legendary divine alchemy. He realizes that the expectations placed upon her are growing, and he wonders if she is truly prepared for the weight of such a legacy. His reflections are cut short when she finally reaches her limit, her legs giving way as the last of her strength fails. He moves instinctively, catching her before she hits the floor and lifting her into his arms, regret washing over him as he realizes he should have listened to the elder's warning and stopped the process much sooner. He stands silently by the bedside, watching over the unconscious young woman. His mind wanders through memories of her unwavering sincerity toward alchemy, recalling the moment he carried her limp form to safety. He knows the path she has chosen is fraught with hardship and tireless effort, yet he wishes for nothing more than for her to find joy in her craft and the strength to chase her dreams. Looking down at her peaceful face, he feels a heavy weight of responsibility, realizing he must guide her more effectively to ensure she can remain this way. It was she, after all, who pulled him from his own professional slump and reminded him of the true joy of alchemy. Suddenly, she begins to stir, a pained groan escaping her lips as she mumbles fitfully about a medicinal herb belonging to her. He watches her struggle with the remnants of her exhaustion, quietly apologizing for his own selfishness in letting her push so far and asking for her forgiveness, just for this one time. The nobleman reaches out, resting a gentle hand on her forehead to soothe her restless spirit. He whispers a promise that she will soon return to her alchemy, but for now, he insists that she must simply focus on resting and recovering her strength. Crane stands amidst the organized chaos of the camp, his sharp eyes tracking the movement of supplies. He reflects on the potion shortage, recalling that Vanessa had recently departed with a batch for Mia, and he silently hopes they reach their destination in time. He is soon joined by Vanessa, who delivers a grim report on the mounting casualties and the slow progress of the search parties. When he offers a small supply of potions he prepared himself, she accepts them with a look of immense relief, admitting they were down to their very last bottle. He then turns to address the gathered knights, his voice steady as he coordinates the search of the northeastern sectors. Despite the gravity of the situation, he notes a strange surge in morale among the men, a flicker of renewed determination that he hadn't expected. He is pulled aside by Vanessa, who presents him with a vial of a peculiar, untested concoction. She questions if he has ever witnessed the effects of this specific brew, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern as she leads him toward the medical tents. She cannot contain her excitement as more crates of the experimental EX potion arrive, her mind racing with the possibilities of its unintended but potentially miraculous properties. They stop to observe a heavily armored soldier preparing to return to the fray, despite his visible exhaustion. The man offers a quick word of thanks before tilting his head back to consume the potion, while Crane watches with a skeptical eye, knowing that standard alchemy rarely restores stamina so instantly. As the soldier drinks, the deep gashes on his arm begin to close with unnatural speed, the skin knitting together and the bruising fading as if time itself were being reversed for his flesh. He clenches his fist, his eyes widening in disbelief as the phantom pains vanish and a surge of raw strength returns to his limbs. Crane stands by, his analytical mind reeling at the sheer potency of the liquid Mia has produced. The warrior confirms that he feels no lingering discomfort and is ready to rejoin the battle immediately. Crane realizes that this is no ordinary medicine. Mia has created something that transcends standard alchemy, a tool that could fundamentally shift the balance of power on the battlefield. He watches as the soldier, now fully restored, shouts his thanks with newfound vigor. The man is eager to return to the search for his daughter, his voice booming with a strength that seemed impossible moments ago. Observing this miracle, the nobleman remains silent for a moment, his sharp eyes taking in the soldier's complete recovery. The weight of the situation settles over the group as the reality of the potion's power sinks in. He then addresses the gathered men, clarifying that the credit for this extraordinary elixir does not belong to him. The soldiers exchange confused glances, wondering who could have produced such a potent remedy. The aristocrat explains that a dedicated apprentice alchemist labored tirelessly to craft the potion despite a dire lack of ingredients. Because she was unable to travel, he had come to deliver her work personally. This revelation underscores the immense pressure alchemists face. Without their constant efforts, more lives would inevitably be lost to the ravages of war. Across the camp, the cycle of conflict continues as fresh troops march toward the front while the wounded are tended to with desperate care. Every drop of medicine represents a hard-fought battle against death itself. Turning back to the commander, he urges them to hold the line and minimize further losses, promising that a steady supply of these new potions will soon reach the front lines. The soldier responds with a sharp salute, swearing that he will not let this second chance go to waste. With a final, determined look, the nobleman prepares to depart, having fulfilled his immediate mission. Once he is finally alone, the stoic facade cracks slightly as he lets out a heavy sigh. The adrenaline of the moment fades, replaced by the cold, draining ache of mana exhaustion. As he steadies himself, his companion joins him, questioning his decision to attribute the entire success to the young girl. He simply replies that he merely assisted, and that the breakthrough was hers alone, earning a knowing smile for his unwavering integrity. He turns to depart, entrusting the remaining tasks to Vanessa. She accepts the responsibility with a wave, reminding him to look after Mia. He responds with a sense of duty, noting that caring for an assistant is the natural obligation of a leader. As he walks away through the stone courtyard, his thoughts linger on the young alchemist. Nearby, Mia has finally succumbed to exhaustion, murmuring happily in her sleep about the success of her potion. He resolves that she, having labored more than anyone, deserves a proper reward for her efforts. Inside the Grand Hall of the Alchemist Guild, a tense confrontation unfolds. Gillis stands before the guild master and Vanessa, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken judgment. The guild master, his expression etched with stern authority, delivers a crushing decree. Gillis is officially expelled from the Alchemist Guild. The young man recoils, his face pale with disbelief as the weight of the words sinks in. The elder continues, recounting the recent monster outbreak that plagued the royal capital. He explains that while the city suffered from a dire shortage of potions, Gillis's selfish hoarding of medicinal herbs turned a difficult situation into an absolute catastrophe, causing chaos that should never have occurred. Attempting to deflect blame, the young man argues that the monster surge was an unpredictable event beyond his control. However, the guild master remains unmoved, pointing out that as a guild member, Gillis had a fundamental duty to provide aid during a crisis, a duty he utterly abandoned. The elder further clarifies that Gillis's actions were deemed malicious. Rather than ensuring potions reached the market, he had mishandled the precious herbs. Had he shown even a modicum of selflessness by donating supplies during the emergency, his punishment might have been far less severe. The weight of his actions is laid bare. In the Eastern Forest, students from the Magic Academy and brave knights were left to suffer without adequate treatment. His waste of resources directly hindered the rescue efforts, leaving many in agony. A single box containing a withered herb serves as a silent testament to his failure. The guild master concludes that by withholding these materials, Gillis effectively sabotaged the very healing work that defines their profession. He stands frozen, unable to find a rebuttal as the guild master adds a final, stinging observation. The elder suggests that all these grievances are based on the assumption that Gillis is even a true alchemist to begin with. Stepping forward, the submaster presents the potion Gillis had submitted for his B-rank certification. She reveals that a thorough analysis of a liquid proved his magic power was never actually integrated into the concoction, exposing a fundamental flaw in his work. He is left reeling as the final truth is spoken. He lacks the ability to perform alchemy. The realization shatters his pride, forcing him to confront the hollow nature of his past achievements and the reality that he has been living a lie. He stares at the potion bottle before him, beads of sweat rolling down his face as the crushing realization hits. He cannot even recognize his own supposed work. Vanessa sighs, explaining that in rare cases, a skill can be completely lost if it remains unused for too long or if the effort put into it diminishes significantly. She then reveals the evidence, comparing the potion Mia submitted for her registration with the one he used for his own promotion exam, noting they share the exact same magical signature. Because of this blatant fraud, she formally declares that he possesses no true alchemical skills and is hereby expelled from the guild, tossing the official decree onto the table as he desperately tries to object. The guild master adds that his actions have severely compromised the city's medical stability, leading to a charge of treason as knights surround him to take him into custody. One of the soldiers presses a blade to his throat, demanding an explanation for why he withheld life-saving medicine from the people who died while he hoarded his supplies. Trembling with a mixture of fear and rage, he refuses to take responsibility, his mind twisting the truth until he convinces himself that everything is Mia's fault. His protests fall on deaf ears as the knights drag him out of the hall, his desperate cries of innocence echoing through the corridors until the heavy doors finally slam shut. Mia lies in a bed within a temporary infirmary, her expression weary and drained. Vanessa sits faithfully by her side, gently inquiring about her well-being. Mia admits to feeling quite ill, her entire body weighed down by a profound and crushing heaviness. She explains that this debilitating fatigue is the natural consequence of completely exhausting one's mana reserves. Vanessa then asks if the potions Mia delivered were sufficient for the task at hand. When Mia tries to express her gratitude, the submaster insists that she should focus entirely on her own recovery for the time being. She continues, mentioning her surprise at finding out Mia's family was officially registered, a fact that seems to weigh on the young alchemist as she looks away with a quiet apology. The conversation shifts toward the involvement of the Night Order, adding a layer of gravity to the situation. She looks up at Vanessa, surprised by the woman's uncharacteristically serious and professional demeanor. Vanessa notes that Mia is perhaps too diligent for her own good, though her tone remains kind and supportive. She lets out a soft giggle, acknowledging that Mia's earnest nature is exactly what saved so many lives. Vanessa reveals that while the Night Order didn't escape unscathed, the casualties were significantly reduced thanks to Mia's contributions. She also mentions that Crane and the others are currently dealing with inquiries regarding the origin and use of the high-quality potions. She offers a sincere word of thanks for the care she has received. Vanessa brushes it off with a smile, claiming she simply wanted to check in on her friend's progress and ensure she was resting properly. He steps into the room, the door clicking shut behind him as he calls out Mia's name. Crane approaches the bedside, his sharp eyes scanning her face to see if she has truly returned to her senses after the ordeal. He asks again about her condition, and though Mia admits she doesn't feel great, she assures him her mind is clear. Relieved by this news, Crane firmly instructs her to remain in bed and rest for at least a week, a command that catches Mia completely off guard. He listens as the conversation turns toward the mysterious holy alchemy skill Mia utilized. Crane warns that because they do not yet fully understand the mechanics or implications of such power, it is vital that they remain cautious and keep the details of the skill a secret from the public for now. He prepares to depart, noting that the Alchemist Guild has summoned him for a meeting, but he urges Mia to go back to sleep. Vanessa playfully suggests she might join Mia for a nap, teasing Crane as he heads out to handle the bureaucratic aftermath of the recent crisis. She arrived at the royal castle in a grand carriage, the wheels coming to a halt as an attendant announced her presence. The transition from the quiet infirmary to the seat of power was abrupt, yet the invitation was one she could not refuse. Stepping inside, the sheer scale of the gathering took her breath away, with adventurers, academy students, and knights all filling the ornate halls. Since regaining consciousness, she had felt the weight of many eyes upon her, a stark contrast to her previously quiet life as an apprentice. Despite the lingering fatigue from her recovery, the allure of a royal feast had been a powerful motivator to attend. She found herself daydreaming about the legendary castle cuisine, a welcome distraction from the social pressures of the event. The reality of the spread exceeded her expectations, featuring succulent meats and lavish dishes that were a far cry from her usual humble meals. The aroma alone was enough to make her forget her anxieties for a brief moment. Her culinary focus was interrupted when Lord Bruce approached, greeting her with a warmth that caught her off guard. He seemed genuinely pleased to see her, despite the formal setting and the high-status guests surrounding them. The nobleman wasted no time in praising her recent alchemical achievements, expressing a desire to establish a direct trading relationship for her potions. He spoke of sending a formal request soon, leaving her to offer a humble and polite acceptance of his interest. As he moved on, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, wondering why a man with such deep ties to Gillis would suddenly seek her out. The thought that he might be considering severing his long-standing contract with a rival was both flattering and deeply suspicious. The arrival of Duke Wolfwood, a high-ranking court official, only added to her mounting tension. Faced with such formidable figures of the nobility, her appetite vanished, replaced by a nervous knot in her stomach that made even the finest delicacies seem unappealing. She began to piece together the situation, suspecting that Vanessa, or perhaps even Crane, had been the ones to facilitate these high-level introductions. The realization that her potions were now the subject of discussion among the kingdom's elite made the weight of her secret, holy alchemy, feel even heavier. Duke Wolfwood confirmed her suspicions by speaking of the crisis at the mine, noting how the exceptional quality of the potions provided had ensured the safe return of many. He offered his sincere gratitude for her work, cementing her new status as an alchemist of significant renown within the royal court. She finds herself the center of unwanted attention as several noblemen crowd around her. One man with wavy hair suggests she abandon the others to join him, while another, leaning in with a confident smirk, asks for just a moment of her time, pointedly mentioning her current unattached status. A third man, looking equally eager, tries to interject, leaving her blinking in surprise at the sudden, aggressive interest. She feels the pressure intensify as they begin to pry into her personal life, questioning her about her recently dissolved engagement. They press her on whether she has already found a new suitor, with one man boldly suggesting they discuss a potential future together. Overwhelmed by their relentless advances and the absurdity of the situation, she can only offer a strained, nervous laugh as she searches for an escape. She seizes a moment of distraction, hitching up her skirts and bolting from the gathering, leaving the bewildered nobles calling after her in confusion. As she hurries through the arched corridors and out into the castle gardens, her thoughts race with a fierce determination. Having finally secured the freedom to live as an alchemist, she refuses to let anyone place another metaphorical collar around her neck. She desperately scans the grounds, seeking a place to hide until the fervor dies down. She flees toward a secluded fountain, but the peace she seeks is short-lived when she discovers a solitary figure already occupying the stone bench. It is Gillis, looking uncharacteristically pensive as he gazes into the distance. When he turns and speaks her name, the shock of the encounter leaves her frozen, her breath catching as she realizes she has run straight into the one person she least expected to find.